Welcome to the world of Pikmin, where if you've never played the game, you may think it's a peaceful and colorful world, when in reality, it's a carnival of chaos. BREADBUGS dragging Pikmin into their dens, Pikmin attacking in swarms like little toddlers fighting over candy, Arctic beetles prepare to suck up everything in existence in order to fill their stomachs. It's a more chaotic world than I ever expected. So I decided to add order to the chaos and organize these wild critters with the help of the PIKLOPEDIA, a complete in-game encyclopedia of creatures within the Pikmin world. After all, I've organized the ecological systems of 6 Pokemon regions already. How hard could this be? So now I bring to you the complete Pikmin 4 food chain. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and happy April Fools, though I suppose the joke is more on me since I actually did decide to specifically organize them all by their diets. I'll keep it simple and have them organized by the following categories: unknown or does not eat, Detrivores, being creatures that decompose material, Autotrophs, who break down simple inorganic matter into nutrients, and Heterotrophs, which derive their energy from eating other creatures. Don't worry about memorizing those though, I'll remind you about them as we go through. I'll be reading from notes or entries, whether that be directly from characters within the games or just general Nintendo guides, and supplement as much as necessary in order to give us our information. It makes it all sound a lot more interesting if I read from the in-game notes from characters, as they are scientists or explorers in their own right, and don't worry about specific organization as to who is above who too much as I talk. I'll show the organized chart at the end of each section for all of you visual learners out there. I tried to refine my research as much as possible, and I learned that basically every creature we discuss today is many times larger than the Pikmin leaders, which, if I assume that they are our size, I am very scared of most of the things that we are going to discuss today. Also, before any of this research, I have known very little to nothing about Pikmin, so this has been a heck of a trip for me. So I'll not only describe our creatures, but also give you my opinions of them as we go along. If you're new to Pikmin, so am I. So let's go through this together. With all of that out of the way, how about we start with all of our creatures at the bottom of our food chain? Creatures that do not eat or are unknown. Honestly speaking, these creatures are strange all in all, since they are not said to prey upon creatures whatsoever. I couldn't find it in any entries. I broke everything down to specifics to organize our creatures. Now, do they eat Pikmin? Do they prey upon other unspecific creatures? Do they eat nectar? So on and so forth. And the creatures in this section say nothing about what they eat, or stated that they directly do not eat at all. They are adjacent to the bottom of the food chain here, rather than actually at the true bottom, and some of them don't necessarily actually belong here, which you'll find out soon enough. We'll start with the glow Pikmin. Although they've been named glow Pikmin, it's not entirely clear whether or not this species is actually a type of Pikmin. These creatures possess the same fundamental behaviors of Pikmin, like carrying things, propagating, and fighting. That's a funny way to say that they mate. And they also share special characteristics, such as the leaf atop their head. Yet, they do not spawn from an onion, but what is called a luminol, and they are only active at night or underground. During the day, they revert into seeds and enter a resting state. What's even more surprising is that they exhibit no actual signs of life. When a Pikmin quote-unquote dies, or rather a glow Pikmin quote-unquote dies, if that word can even be used, it does not exhibit, or rather expire, in the typical sense. I used the wrong word using exhibit there. Instead, it just becomes a form of light, or perhaps a photon, and returns to the luminol. Putting aside my scientist hat for a moment, it seems to me that this creature or entity may not be a living organism at all, but some manner of spiritual substance. At least that is what it says there, and whether or not it's a spiritual substance, it's really interesting to consider the idea that it could be just pure on photons or electrons, as that is often what is suspected to be what ghosts actually are in real life. They are kind of cute, have a bit of a weakness towards ghostly friends in any form of media, but yeah, they serve a greater creature, but otherwise do not eat at all themselves. Wattlepuss. These names. I'm gonna laugh a lot. A lot of these names are really dumb, and I don't pre-read, right? I type out all my notes, and then I record. And I don't pre-read other than that. So it just gets me. Now, It has a silly name, and they are just straddling the line of cute and ugly perfectly. Its eyes and stubby feet make it look like an octopus, hence the name, but it's closer in anatomy to a starfish. The Autotrophs is a relatively large amphibious creature. This enemy uses bubbles to temporarily incapacitate nearby attackers. When you encounter this creature on dry land, flank the Autotrophs and have your squad charge the enemy from the rear. If any of your Pikmin become trapped in a bubble, attack the bubble to instantly free the Pikmin. The same tactics apply when you encounter this enemy in water, just make sure your squad only contains blue Pikmin. It sleeps during the day, but will stay alert for approaching predators, which it drives off by puffing itself up and releasing bubbles. Closer research suggests that the true purpose for the bubbles is to protect its eggs during spawning season. I was very tempted to consider it a heterotroph due to being more closely related to a starfish, but it doesn't have any notes stating that it consumes plankton at all through its processes, as other creatures I will discuss in the future do, and it does very directly state that it does not eat Pikmin, and it has not tried to eat any creatures using this bubbly tactic that it has. So it at least is just going to stay in this unknown category. Arachnorbs are a trio of creatures, with a number of them being biomechanical for that matter. None of which, though, will state anything about eating anything, nor seem to have the ability to do so, but will actively decide to crush Pikmin at the very least. Now, I will note that there are a number of arachnorbs out there, and they are related to spiders in some capacity, hence the arach part of its name, but they are visually incredibly strange and a little varied between them all, or maybe incredibly varied as we talk about two of the outliers here, starting with the baldy longlegs. Technically, this is merely a shaggy longlegs that has lost its hair, but since the hair never grows back, this is considered a separate species and classified under its own name. It has similarities to the beady longlegs, but it doesn't secrete wax from its exoskeleton and thus lacks its cousin's unique patterning. The absence of wax also allows small insects to climb its legs without slipping. Its central orb splits horizontally, but researchers have yet to determine the significance of this difference. I have to admit, I love Olimar's notes as he speaks to the scientists within me as I look through everything here, but Brittany, if you ever read everything, speaks to my chaotic side and Louis speaks to my stomach. But yes, it doesn't seem to eat insects, just allows them to climb up them, which feels even creepier to imagine. It just kind of reminds me of the plant from Little Shop of Horrors, but with spider eggs. And I just imagine that thing opening up and there being an eyeball inside. Man-at-legs, this species of arachnorb family fuses with machinery, which is so dope, at a crucial point in the maturation process, giving it the ability to fire energy bursts from the launcher beneath its orbicular torso. Oh my gosh, this is some Warhammer 40k type stuff. However, the man-at-legs itself is not in control of this weapon. Instead, the mechanical portions of its structure appear to automatically acquire and attack targets. The man-at-legs has a gentle disposition, and as a member of the arachnorb family, it has no natural enemies. It is particularly difficult to understand why this species would develop such awesome offensive capabilities, leading to rumors among the scientific community that it was the machinery that approached the arachnorb and proposed this symbiotic relationship. This creature is said to have some sort of metabolism, meaning that it does need to consume something as an auto or heterotroph, but nothing is stated as to what it does eat. This is a perfect example of a flaw within a food chain, or really, I guess, pyramid, to be honest with you. It's because while it doesn't seem to have prey, it also has no natural predators. This means that, yeah, it should theoretically be much higher up on the food chain, if not at the top for its specific environmental location. Keep this in mind for any future creatures we may discuss, as I just don't intend to continually bring up this fact, but it is very important to address here and now. Now, isn't it freaking sick to think about the idea of something mechanical having enough wherewithal and mental aptitude to want to combine symbiotically with a naturally occurring bio creature? Like, that might be terrifying if it was a movie, but this is dope in some capacity, if we just ignore the terrifying aspect of it all. But that actually does clear our first category of our outliers, the creatures that do not eat or are unknown. And before we continue, I just want to say, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy, please make sure that you do subscribe, share the video around and the channel around, become a member for perks, and you get your shout out at the end of every video with the credits rolling on screen as I say everybody's names. If you want me to cover more food chains from other games, support the channel in any way you can, because I would love to explore the ecology or even lore of other games like this one on occasion. It's been fun experiencing the Pikmin world, and I don't know, it just sounds like a great time. And if you're here because you saw Pikmin and you don't know the rest of my videos, go check out my Pokemon stuff. I try to put science and lore into everything that I do because it's fun. Breathe new life into our childhood. But I digress. Again, thank you for watching, and on with the video. Detrivores. Creatures that essentially just break down matter for their sustenance. This can be carcasses or other already decomposing matter. In real life, we'd find things like mushrooms, certain types of insects, and maybe even carrion birds here. But here in the world of Pikmin, we start with the female and mama sheargrub. The female sheargrub's jaws are soft and cannot catch prey. When mature, it burrows into the soil to form a pupa, lays eggs in the pupa without emerging, and dies soon afterwards. I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh at that. There's so many creatures that just lay eggs, die. The male of this species are purple and black creatures with tapered mouths, while the females are lighter in color and lack an armored exoskeleton. As with most mandiblards, these creatures have regressed to the point where they have lost both legs and wings. They can be seen crawling around on the ground and are believed to feed on the vegetable extracts from the congealed fluids of expired Pikmin. So, wait for Pikmin to expire, for them to die, whatever reason that they might, and then it's just like, city, you catch? As for the mama sheargrub will typically molt when it reaches maturity, then dig itself into the ground to prepare for egg laying. However, certain types, like this specimen, exhibit neoteny, Neoteny, that's a new word for me, and retain the appearance of a juvenile of this species. If this species locates an abundant food source, they won't leave it. Sometimes they will stay at that spot for years, steadily growing to gigantic proportions like this one. I mean, honestly, I would do the same. If you're telling me I'm defenseless, I have no carapace to protect myself, and I can't attack other creatures, grab onto them, grab onto prey, opponents, whatever else, yeah, if I find a source of food, I'm going to stay inside the refrigerator for the rest of my life and just continue to grow. Though this specimen has the look of a juvenile, it has fully developed reproductive abilities and can achieve impressively high birth rates. Just popping them out. Its offspring, however, are the same size as a typical sheargrub. I find the female sheargrubs incredibly cute in a really weird way, even though they look like fleshy, naked mole rats or a weird Masharna of sorts. And yes, of course, I had to throw in a Pokemon, and I will throw in a Pokemon here and there. I'm primarily a PokeTuber, so you can't blame me for sneaking that in. But, again, Detrivores, moving on. BREADBUG, I want to eat it! Look at that perfectly eggy, yolk-covered carapace that it has. I am willing to eat crickets if they're chocolate covered. If you think I could resist eating BREADBUGs, you're wrong. I will be a monster. Anywho, the adult BREADBUG competes for many of the same food sources as Pikmin, but its thick-skinned hide allows it to withstand most Pikmin group attacks. However, some researchers claim to have observed the BREADBUG being overwhelmed by massive numbers of Pikmin and then reduced to food. The BREADBUG is a scavenger and will drag away lightweight Pikmin food. Don't bother attacking the BREADBUG, instead send your Pikmin to go after the piece of food that the BREADBUG is dragging. With enough Pikmin, your team will be able to overpower the BREADBUG and drag it back to an onion. When the onion beams up the bug, the pest will take major damage. So, we'll cover Pikmin later, but I'm gonna note now that they are autotrophic, eating nectar as well as whatever they are able to scavenge, which they're not really, again, eating whatever they scavenge or bringing it back to the onion, which we're just gonna talk about next. Sometimes the onion lies dormant, much like a bulb, but dig it up from the ground and provide it with the right stimulus, for example, a good hard shake, and it will activate, sprouting 3 root-like legs, which I've seen those roots, and if you look at an actual onion when it starts to sprout, very similar, which is kind of scary. It serves a role similar to a nest or an incubator for the Pikmin, absorbing pellets or the bodies of dead creatures for their nutritional value, and then propagating Pikmin the same color as itself. Onions are also seemingly greedy and attempts to replicate certain characteristics of the matter that they absorb by combining with or absorbing other onions, sometimes of the same type. It's been confirmed that just like Pikmin, an onion has muscle fibers in its body, and though it is unable to walk, it is capable of a small range of motion. However, when one breaks down the biological matter it has absorbed, a fuel similar to bioethanol is created. Onions spray this fuel out of the mouths on their underbellies and are able to fly, using their flower-like propellers for stabilization. I want whatever the person who came up with that was on, because this is redonkulous. Muscle fibers, like, don't get me wrong, plants in real life, they can move, they can sense their surroundings, you name it, right? That's just what they do. And they carefully move about because they only really have one chance at survival. You make a mistake, you're losing your entire body probably. Whereas with these onions, they have their muscle fibers and are able to control themselves a little bit more and move more. This is horrifying, but fascinating. The world of Pikmin is awesome. I know, it won me over already. I love extraterrestrial life being similar to our own, but in the end, being vastly different than what we expect. Creatures that are part plants, part animal in terms of their cells, creatures with greater levels of intelligence being outwardly shown. Like, again, it can be argued that plants in real life, and it's being studied, may have some actual level of sentience by our standards, and they definitely can see the world around them, but of course our monkey brains are not interested unless we see them moving in real time like we do, rather than being these slow, methodical creatures that they typically are. Going back to the onion though, we also have the Flarlic, which it doesn't sprout or create Pikmin. This species is still a type of onion though. It is highly nutrient dense and contains strong, energizing, and analeptic effects. The compounds responsible for its characteristic smell resemble onion growth hormones. When absorbed by an onion, it fulfills a critical role in Pikmin proliferation by increasing the total number of Pikmin that can be withdrawn from the onion at any given time. Just like onions, it contains muscle fibers, but Flarlic has no animalistic qualities to speak of. However, if you place one near an onion, it may start to move a bit, as though it's trying to roll over, so that way it can be absorbed. It did take me a little bit to realize that it is just based on the word garlic, Flarlic, onion. So we have garlic and onions creating Pikmin, which makes perfect sense when you start to consider the biological maturity of these creatures throughout the PIKLOPEDIA and how they relate to a real-life plant, the flowering portions, so on and so forth, as we even get into the fruiting parts of it all. Our last entry for the Detrivores, though, is in fact the garlic to the glow Pikmin, known as the luminol. Besides the fact that they serve as incubators and nests for glow Pikmin, we know very little about the luminol's ecology. Also, luminol, luminescence, I believe luminol, if I remember correctly, its benefit, is a chemical, or one of the chemicals, that do make things glow. So, luminol, the creature, is just a play on that, as it does glow at night. When nocturnal creatures die, a luminol can break them down into glow pellets through its strong dissolving enzymes. This matter, when condensed, becomes glow sap. One might assume glow sap is then an extremely dangerous substance, but it has hardly any negative effects. In fact, I've had it administered to me personally as a curative medicine to break down growing leaves. Not me, character in the game. Luminols will only appear in places where an onion was located earlier in the day, and since they propagate glow Pikmin, one could surmise that they are rhizomes from these onions. Perhaps using its dissolving powers, it returns the nectar that supports the ecosystem back to the soil. They kind of remind me visually of Sandigas or Palossand, which makes them personified and once again weirdly cute in my eyes. I find a lot of things cute that I really shouldn't. I'm starting to realize that it's usually what others would not see as cute or adorable. Oops. But they are really cool to imagine that these are another way for nectar to continue its cycle throughout the world of Pikmin, as we will find out many things rely on nectar, or nectar is like the base form, getting your sugars, your glucose, whatever it is that you really need as a base form of sustenance. Onto the Autotrophs. Autotrophic creatures are able to break down simple inorganic matter such as carbon dioxide or minerals into nutrients. We start out with the fiery dweevil. Despite the way they look, they are autotrophs. Members of the dweevil family are known for carrying objects of astounding size on their backs, then mimicking them. The fiery dweevil is one species in this family. Generally, this is a very gentle insect that feeds on grass and nectars. There it is. But when faced with danger, the fiery dweevil ignites flammable internal gases, juts out its jaw, and spews scorching flames. It is a dragon insect. As this clearly makes it a rather dangerous insect, it is best not to linger directly in front of it. This species did give me the biggest headache because their diets can vary incredibly between them, and those diets actually cause a morphological and chemical difference in their abilities. Also, they're creepy, and I don't like looking at them and their creepy little hands that they have right in front of them. Reminds me of something that belongs at Courage the Cowardly Dog, and even though I loved that, I don't like these things, and me loving that show may have actually, impacted my love for horror over the years, which, it is what it is. But again, that one just eats nectar, and somehow turns that nectar into flames. Now, up next, we do have the armored cannon larva. This specimen is a lithopod larva. This expedition was unable to confirm the existence of any mature lithopods, leading to concerns that the species was extinct on this planet, but the discovery of the creature in larval form eased such concerns. Lithopods, like flint beetles, use internal metabacteria to aid in chemical digestion. These metabacteria can only survive in certain environments, such as within the body of certain insects, so lithopod larvae do not contain any metabacteria immediately after hatching. Larvae feed on partially digested or regurgitated by mature lithopods, ensuring the larvae obtain metabacteria they would not normally have acquired. So, to break that down in easier terms, big mama lithopod eat it and then regurgitate like a mama bird into this thing's big old open spaghetti-o mouth. And that's how they get their bacteria. There's a lot of different ways that we as humans even will get bacteria that we need. To briefly speak on it, when you are born, if it is not through a C-section, your entry into this world actually provides you with bacteria on your body that can, if that is good for you to have, and if you don't have it, it has been shown that it can lead to things like eczema, asthma somehow, amongst a number of other things. So, yeah, even small things like the way you're born gives you bacteria that you need in order to just function and survive normally. Otherwise, you end up with diseases, which is wild to me. And to not, be super weird about it, I can speak on that personally. I was a C-sectioned baby, and, yeah, I have both asthma and I've had eczema in the past, which was, I don't know, it was a bit of information I wasn't entirely ready for. But going back to our armored cannon larva, they look like a mix between caterpie and a big mouth bass, and it just makes me want to throw a giant piece of just cartoon ham into its mouth, even though that's not at all what it eats. Considering it does eat ore, it is a chemotroph specifically. Along those same lines, we have the Arctic cannon larva. Like the other members of the lithopod family, its internal bacteria are specialized to form ice compounds from ambient moisture, which it then expels as projectiles. It technically doesn't rely on cold temperatures to create this ice, which is formed by pressurized internal fluids that act as a coolant. When the projectiles rapidly expand, they absorb ambient heat, lowering the air temperature enough for the moisture in the air to freeze. I'm not gonna gush about it every single time, but the science in this is insane, and I'm in love with this. I can see why people have been wanting me to look into Pikmin for a while now. Horned cannon beetle. Males of this species are known for their horn-like blowholes. When females reach maturity, their blowhole closes and they lose the ability to launch rocks. At the start of breeding season, the females lay eggs on rocks launched by a male. Okay, that's cool. The rocks then become food for the glowing larva. Welcome to the new world. Thunk! That's amazing. Though once mistaken for adult armored cannon beetles, this species is actually a naturalized non-native species that migrated here from another continent. The horned cannon beetle can breed with adult armored cannon beetles, but only about half of the eggs will actually hatch. This hybrid species has the potential to seriously pollute the gene pool. Furthermore, it exhibits aggressive, territorial behavior, sometimes launching boulders at young armored cannon beetles, which have driven the latter species to the verge of extinction. So now we even get the ecological standards of this, which is the fact that this other species, basically invasive species, comes in onto this planet and is seeing something similar to itself. Oh no, it's a competitor for the same food, and it blasts the young while also mating with their kind, so that way they infect the gene pool and slowly, not only like through active aggression, kill off the other species, but through mating, they kill off the other species because, again, only half the eggs are going to actually hatch until eventually we only have the horned cannon beetle. And this dude looks sick. Suck rocks in through the mouth, blast out the top hole. The color is perfect, and the Hercules beetle-like design mixed a bit with dung beetle is dope. Easily one of my favorite creatures that I've seen through Pikmin. I want to see an army of them right into battle. But in the end, they are still cannon beetles that are eating ore. So, chemotrophic creatures. White Spectralid. It's remarkably similar to its unmarked brethren, but the telltale wing patterns and lone pair of hind legs give it away. It sticks to its own habitat for the most part, though it may fly away to reach a flower or escape a bullblax. It will soon return to its home. The white variety gathers no nectar, but sometimes may be found carrying raw material, a relative of the butterfly with antennae-like eyes and pair of hind legs. Its body is covered with white hairs, and black crests can be seen on its white forewings and hind wings. It is a poor flyer, as its body is heavy in relation to its wing size, so it's not able to keep flying for long periods of time. Should really take some notes after the bumblebee. And it has another feature, which is that it perches on the ground because it takes in nutrients from the ground, minerals, then accumulate in its body. Simply put, we can assume that that makes it a chemotroph within our autotrophic grouping here. These spectralids, oh my goodness, look like and are all related to butterflies, so they get a point for being pretty. The other spectralids are our yellow and red ones, both having the same diet of nectar, or at least having a diet of nectar, unlike the white spectralid here, but I'll just read out their information to round them out. For the red spectralid, its red wings have several spots, unlike the lone spot on each wing of the yellow variety. Its scales contain trace amounts of ultra-spicy flakes, which are mixed into its saliva as it sucks up the nectar from its flowers, from flowers. The combined flakes, saliva, and nectar are refined into ultra-spicy nectar inside the creature, which it uses as a growth supplement for its eggs. Despite this, its reproductive capabilities are quite low. It is for this reason that the red variant fetches astronomical prices among collectors. The primary morphological difference from other spectralids, then, when we look at the yellow one, is the eye-like spot on its hind wings. When crossbred with red spectralids, the offspring have a 25% chance of inheriting these spots on orange-colored wings. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same, just remove the spicy. Honeywisp. The nectar specter seems to appear out of thin air, and it is able to hover in place with little movement. Large drops of nectar form on the specter's tail, and it is uncertain as to whether the fleeting creature secretes the fluid from its transparent body or accumulates the substance via pollination. Appropriately named for its elusive nature, the nectar specter remains very much a mystery and requires further research. This creature collects nectar for the larva waiting in its nest. Pikmin stop growing once they're uprooted, but you can advance them to the flower stage of development by letting them take a sip of the nectar. The golden substance dangles from the tails of honeywisps, and you can force one of the creatures to release its cargo by throwing a Pikmin at it. So, the honeywisp could be placed elsewhere, maybe in the unknown section, but I placed them here on the idea that they at least consumed nectar in their larval stage. Otherwise, we would place them again in that does not eat section. I just imagine that with their shape, they would be constantly undulating back and forth, up and down, and I'm not really sure how to feel about that. Nearly all of our blowhogs can be found here as well, fitting into the chemotroph variety of eaters, though there's possible argument for one to maybe be eating plankton. Let's just start with the fiery blowhog. This creature expels a volatile phosphorus compound from its snout that combusts upon contact with the air. This fire-breathing ability is dependent upon the air-to-fuel ratio at its mouth, catalyst reaction within the expelled compound and purification of the compound. In other words, how much air is coming in, how much is it being like catalyzed, and then how pure is the substance. If all of those are high, then you could assume big boom is going to happen. Thus, it is highly unlikely such a complex process could cause the spontaneous combustion, or expulsion rather, of a fallen blowhog. I feel like that's, even though I made a mistake there in my words, I feel like that's pretty much the same thing. This process is also perhaps to avoid risk of spontaneous combustion, oh there it is, in the belly of a live specimen. However, one should still treat a fiery blowhog with great care, even after its life functions have ceased. Considering that white phosphorus is only created and not naturally found, I figured out that it is specifically broken down from phosphorus rocks. This means that considering it is not said to eat any prey or anything at all really, we can assume it may be a chemotroph, and the white phosphorus is basically its own version of getting rid of waste. More specifically though, they are basically always found by water, so that could be their intake source. So, in other words, maybe something's in the water, being broken down, they drink it, they separate the white phosphorus, and then, set off their chemicals. The rest of our blowhogs are fairly similar, with one exception that we'll talk about later, but may not actually let out fire, so it took a second to figure out properly whether or not they still have the same white phosphorus in their bodies and are doing the same thing, which they pretty much are. A variant subspecies of the fiery blowhog, the watery blowhog, lacks several of the genes necessary for the production of fire-producing catalysts and thus expels jets of the non-flammable liquid. This subspecies appears to have only recently evolved. However, the hereditary traits of this variant are dominant and highly robust, so its population is rapidly increasing. I would be open to the possibility of it being a filter feeder, but I'm not entirely sure. So, when we look at this thing, when it says about how it's dominant and highly robust, basically that means if it mates with other types of its own species, it is more likely that between a fiery and a watery blowhog, if they mated, they would more than likely produce a watery blowhog. Also, every time that I look at them, I just want to squeeze them. They look like water bladders to me, all of them, and I don't know, I want to make them violently release their chemical compounds like flamethrowers and water guns. Is that so wrong? Maybe it is when I put it that way. Anywho, let's talk about the snowy blowhogs, which have the ability to condense atmospheric carbon dioxide within an organ called a cold sac. The cold sac creates dry ice, and its vapors are then expelled as icy breath. It can keep its internal body temperature from rising because the phosphoric compounds it expels only ignite when they make contact with the air. In contrast, the snowy blowhog maintains internal body conditions below freezing, and its other internal organs are protected by thick layers of fat and the extracellular freezing that occurs within its cold sac. I am starting to imagine all these creatures being used for things like heat, air conditioners, and refrigerators, though I don't recommend doing that as dry ice is not the same as regular ice, and also they are living organisms, so that would make it very unethical. Our next two of the blowhogs are just giant versions of the fiery and snowy blowhog. They have some problems going on, but they'd be put towards the top of the food chain. First up, though, is the Titan blowhog. Due to hormone abnormality, this fiery blowhog specimen has grown to an irregularly, giant size. As a result, its mouth and the organs that regulate its fire-breathing abilities are significantly larger, so the firepower of this specimen greatly exceeds that of its normal counterpart. The fire it produces is actually so strong that the stress it places on the creature's internal organs is magnified, thus reducing its overall lifespan. This specimen is also unable to reproduce. So its firepower is a double-edged sword. The more it uses it, the less it has life left to live. I put that in a really weird way, but I think you get it. There's also something very special about a game that goes into this much detail to talk about the biological development of a creature. It's something we see time and time again as we go through the Pikmin or PIKLOPEDIA, and it, again, makes me really want to play the game. Let's get to the last of the autotrophic blowhogs, though, and check off the blizzarding blowhog. This specimen is actually a snowy blowhog, that lethal expeller of icy air. However, it's grown to a gigantic size thanks to an endocrine abnormality. Unlike the Titan blowhog, this condition does not sentence the blizzarding blowhog with a shorter lifespan. In fact, its lifespan is actually much longer than that of the average snowy blowhog. The organs that produce the dry ice are also enlarged in this specimen, perhaps in order to make production more efficient. So you could get into like the whole idea of ice and freezing cells or slowing down, or maybe even the idea that maybe this thing is able to just slow down the march of time on itself due to its ability to withstand the cold while also creating cold. I'm not sure how that science is out, but that's dope. The iridescent flint beetle. Flint beetles are nocturnal, choosing to hide in the grass by day and stay active at night. These creatures keep undigested food pellets in their stomachs to sustain them through winter, but given the right stimulus, they will spit them out. Recent research has revealed that these pellets are enveloped in a membrane that seals and preserves them in a sterile, airtight environment. If kept at room temperature, it seems that this pellet membrane will keep its contents fresh for up to 6 months. The membrane may be made from the same substance that gives the exoskeleton of the flint beetle its beautiful sheen. This specimen is a subspecies of the previously documented species, recognizable by the variant pattern on its back. They create the pellets themselves, and I did have to look at Pikmin 3, they will drop nectar if attacked. So I would like to assume, since they don't hunt for prey or even attempt to attack Pikmin, they eat nectar. To me, they're just jade, scarab, beetle-like creatures visually, just without the wings. Pretty, but no other real opinion. Though there is another within this beetle family to discuss here, the iridescent glint beetle. This variety of beetle consumes subterranean minerals. There's our chemotroph. Due to the fact that it rarely emerges above ground, sightings of this particular species are extremely rare. While minerals are this beast's primary source of food, the beetle itself does not have the ability to digest these minerals. Instead, metabacteria, here it comes again, living inside the beetle's stomach, chemically break down the minerals. Nice and clear for us. The resulting purified metal is discharged, but rare metals such as gold and platinum crystallize onto the iridescent glint beetle's shell, resulting in the beautiful laminated shimmer. And then, despite not stating a diet, we shall keep the last of this family with these other two as we discuss the doodlebug. While life forms that excrete foul musks to warn of danger are not rare, the doodlebug is the only species known to release flatulence when active above ground. Interestingly enough, since it is merely releasing the gas created by the decay of the contents of the creature's intestines, it does not have a special musk-producing organ. This means the creature is in fact merely flatulating, or farting if we want to take it out of the scientific terms. Spectral analysis of the rank gas indicates it contains not only methane, but hydrogen sulfide as well, making the flatulence a grade 13 biohazard. Hydrogen sulfide is produced naturally by decaying organic matter and is released from crude petroleum, natural gas, volcanic gases, liquid manure, sewage sludge, landfills, and sulfur hot springs. So there is a chance that this is still naturally occurring through the same chemotrophic diet. It's just coming out a little bit more of a dangerous way. And if I remember correctly, I think grade 13 is actually very low, but it's not something you want to inhale still, as it is still dangerous to you. I believe as you get closer to 1, it is more dangerous, if I'm remembering correctly. Moss. As far as I can tell, Moss has been a leafling pup since birth, and some of her DNA resembles that of the Pikmin. This is the one point in which she differs from Oachi. They are both the space dogs in this game. When Oachi transformed from a standard space dog into a leafling pup, I started to theorize that the Pikmin are in some capacity propagating their DNA in other organisms. The phenomenon in which all those castaways, including myself, became leaflings was very likely caused by being absorbed into the onion. Perhaps that process was also some sort of Pikminification of the body. Pikminified organisms can't leave this planet, so the Pikmin may have been motivated to carry out this process in an effort to secure a permanent leader. Of course, this is all a theory. So in other words, what they're saying is Pikmin, being a creature that when they gang up can take down a lot of the other creatures on this planet, depending on what type of Pikmin they are, and they're heavily adaptable to their environment and their surroundings, sit there and go, well, we could just keep growing in rapid high numbers, or alternatively, instead of us having to think, we can turn other people or things into some sort of Pikmin-like creature, make them dependent on the same things we are, and then they get to do the work and we just have to listen, and we know that our species will survive long term. It's a kind of crazy thing to imagine. Now, assuming that it really is like Pikmin and that its fur is truly identical to moss, thus its name moss, then we can safely assume that it is an autotroph despite being a dog. They remind me of the weirdly textured Yoshi, and I'm not the most fond of petting it, though if it actually does feel like moss, which is super soft and cushiony, then sure, maybe I like it a little bit more. Swooping snitch bug. The Scarpinids originally lived on the ground, sporting poorly developed vestigial wings. This species developed enlarged antennae that could be used as makeshift wings. Scarpinids are attracted by the sight of large groups of Pikmin in cavalry formation and will swoop down to seize them. However, these Scarpinids do not eat Pikmin, and they will drop any seized Pikmin after a short time. The reason for this behavior is theorized to be due to this act helping Pikmin flowers grow, and these creatures will instead feed on the nectar from them. Again, we start to see some sort of ecology forming here between creatures within the Pikmin world and how dependent they actually are on food sources adjacent to the Pikmin themselves, or even relying on the Pikmin themselves. Basically, what I'm understanding is, if you remove the Pikmin from this world, despite them also being able to beat the ever-loving heaven out of every other creature here, when in large groups, you remove the Pikmin, they're like the bees of the world. Gone. There will be no more life. Pikmin. So I can make this simple and state all standard Pikmin are Nectivores, or Nectrivores. Something that I did not find directly within their PIKLOPEDIA and took a little bit of moving around. Though, the ice and rock ones are said to be parasitic, but only for rock and ice, which is weird to think because I typically associate parasitic tendencies towards organic creatures, not inorganic creatures. But let's get the basis for Pikmin and then go through all of the different types. Pikmin are a part of the Ambuloraticus class, sure, which consists of creatures that exhibit both plant and animal characteristics. A Pikmin will instinctively follow whoever plucks it from the ground, so it is quite common for them to form symbiotic relationships with another species or accept a leader of a different species, as it serves the goal of propagating their own species as a whole. Well, there goes pretty much everything that I said earlier. The red Pikmin is the most common Pikmin species. It can be identified by the nose-like protuberance on its head and its highly aggressive behavior. It also has a few surprising and unique qualities. For example, its immunity to extreme heat and fire, despite the fact that it's a living organism. This can be explained by looking closely at its skin and muscle fibers, which are made up of a flame-resistant cellulose. Yellow Pikmin possess a perfect resistance to electricity, a force which actually poses extreme danger to other organisms, no duh. Oddly enough, this species of Pikmin actually seems to enjoy electricity. Their flowers even bloom when they are exposed to an electric current. This fact would lead one to believe that their neurotransmission methods are quite different than our own. This species often uses their ear-like lamellae on its head to soar to great heights and dig holes. The blue Pikmin possess a gill resembling a mouth on their head, which enables them to be active underwater. While on land, they leaf and flower like other Pikmin species, and they breathe through their stomata on their skin, indicating they must be naturally amphibious. Pigment proteins on the surface of their body essentially perform the same photosynthetic process as cyanobacteria, for example, which is what gives them their striking color. Rock Pikmin is a member of the Pikmin genus, but its body does not share any of the plant-like traits that Pikmin are known for. Instead, it's composed primarily of stone. The stone is actually the chosen host for a parasitic subset of Pikmin species nicknamed Hermikmin. Similar to how a seed can sprout and push through the cracks of a rock, the Pikmin's roots stretch deep into the stone, storing its vital organs in an interior cavity that resembles a crystal geode. Because this species displays characteristics common in parasitism, one could hypothesize that the rock onion and rock candy pop bud stockpile stone that will eventually host the rock Pikmin. Now I'm going to slow down because I just read off a ton of entries, and this is insane to me. All of these different adaptive qualities that they have there, storing their organs inside of rocks, having stomata, these openings within their, like, or not even, oh gosh, stomata. You know what? I'm going to re-educate myself. Give me a moment. Tiny pores on the surface of plants, primarily leaves, that facilitate gas exchange, CO2 in, O2 out, and control water loss through transpiration, with their opening and closing regulated by specialized guard cells. I thought that's what it was, but considering it was a blue Pikmin, it threw me off a little bit. And then you get into the whole idea of like, oh, the neurotransmission methods within the yellow Pikmin are completely different. Whereas like our brain sends out a signal, something sends a signal to the brain, and then it does it all day, otherwise we can't move, think, so on and so forth. And our spine is like the basis for a huge amount of that. It's like, oh, yeah, you shock these things, and then their head, the flower on their head, leaves and then blooms, meaning that it has to be relatively different than what we have. And then you go into the fiery red Pikmin who's like, oh yeah, I have cellulose through my body, as such I'm flame resistant. You stack enough of that up and you're not completely flame immune, get a hot enough flame and sure, yeah, it's probably gone. Like, there's flames hotter than what nature can produce, and that would probably burn this thing, but any natural flame is probably gonna let this red Pikmin stay perfectly alive. This is awesome. But let's get, now that you've, been reintroduced to all those concepts and my geeking out of it, let's continue with more information here. For the winged Pikmin, the wings on the back of this flying Pikmin species closely resemble the wings you would find on a flying creature. Wow, thank you, Sherlock. Reincarnation over here. It's possible that an ancient winged onion somehow absorbed a flying creature's DNA, which then resulted in the precursor to the winged Pikmin transforming into the species we recognize today. If this theory is correct, then onions might also be serving the role of messenger, transmitting new traits and characteristics to their Pikmin. Actually, that is, okay, now that I'm done being facetious, that's actually a huge thing to imagine. So if you feed any of these onions the right material, then there is always the chance that the Pikmin that is then produced would have acquired traits from whatever you gave them. It's like, think of Kirby. Kirby eats an enemy and then gets the power from it. That is what these onions are doing, to my understanding. Ice Pikmin supposedly evolved from plants, yet there are also Pikmin species with bodies made of ice, known as Ice Pikmin. How is this possible? The answer to this question lies in the fact that ice Pikmin are parasitic by nature, and the ice serves as their host. The composition of this type of ice is, predictably, mostly water, but it resembles saline solution, salt, with faint concentrations of trace sodium ions, potassium ions, and calcium ions that function as neurotransmitters. Interestingly, the ice exhibits no visual signs of melting or dripping when exposed to sunlight. This is due to its low temperature core, which continuously creates more ice in order to maintain a consistent size. White Pikmin are, quote-unquote, born through a color-changing process within white candy pop buds, which only grow underground. The poison within its body is a type of diterpene alkaloid, similar to a toxin often found in certain plant roots. If ingested, it can lead to vomiting, respiratory distress, and complete organ failure, ultimately resulting in death due to cardiac arrest, so do not eat them. Though strong, this poison also has medicinal uses, sometimes going by the name aconite. The Pikmin are ambuloradices and evolved from plants, but it seems some species retain more of their plant-based evolutionary heritage than others. And then finally, slightly larger in size, purple Pikmin can weigh up to 10 times as much as other Pikmin species, and when thrown to the ground, their impact creates gravitational waves that can actually warp space-time. I love them. I love the purple Pikmin so much. The purple and the white Pikmin are the best, in my opinion. I don't know, I like poison-type Pokemon, so of course the poison Pikmin is baller to me, let alone the gravitationally distorting chubby Pikmin that I already loved so much. My fat boy is destroying reality itself. The density of their muscle fibers is also much higher than that of other Pikmin, allowing them to transport 10 times as much weight as their average-sized counterparts. Their rich purple color is derived from strong polyphenol antioxidants. Like white Pikmin, they are born from underground candy pop buds, and no related onions have been discovered so far. But I think somewhere underground, deep among the relics of the past, a purple onion is waiting to be discovered. I don't really have much else that I could say about the Pikmin. I'm falling in love with them more and more. I like the ones that I already loved more now. let's move on to the pellet rosy. In the stem of the pellet posy, oh, I typed it out wrong. It's the pellet posy. One can observe the muscle fiber unique to half plant, half animal species, such as the Pikmin and candy pop blood flowers. So the pellet posy is a species that can be considered a close relative. Although the ability to crystallize nectar is unique to a small group of the pellet weed family, the fact that these plants reach maturity so quickly and that their pellets contain such high concentrations of the natural nutrients in the soil explains why the Pikmin and so many of the other native species are so reliant on these pellets for sustenance. So, in other words, they just create nutrient-rich pellets that many creatures can thrive on. In my eyes, I see these similar to how, important cacti can be through the desert, or a singular rainfall can affect an entire landscape dramatically in the desert by causing massive sloughs of sand to slide. Without the pellet posy, a lot of life would struggle, and the Pikmin are thought to be closely related to them and others, which leans into the idea of how connected and cyclical nature here within the Pikmin world can actually be. The last of our autotrophs includes the burgeoning spiderwort. Like the pellet posy, while nectar is its primary source of nutrients, this burgeoning spiderwort produces fruit with high amounts of a super spicy compound. Both this plant and the pellet posy are part of the pellet weed family, but the spiderwort does not crystallize nectar because of the different fungi that parasitize its roots. Instead, it produces alkaloids that contain those extra piquant compounds. Picante, spicy, extra spicy compounds. The alkaloids are then extracted and collected by way of the plant's fruit. Honestly, if we just ignore that it is using nectar as a primary source instead of carbon dioxide as one primary source, it's not that hard to accept and wrap our heads around this as an idea for a plant. Also, that super spicy compound sounds like it'd be pretty good on some food. Now it's time for the rest of the Pikmin creatures, really, as it is heterotroph time. It's you and me, baby. Creatures that eat plants, animals, and whatever you want to call the combination that Pikmin are. Technically, they're plant-animal hybrid creatures with ambulatory root structures, as we've discussed, but what does that mean? Basically, it means they can walk on the roots freely for movement. Anywho, let's talk about the creatures that eat other creatures, starting with the ice-blown dweevil. Dweevils, again, have varying colors for their body in response to their feeding habits. Each species feeds on different types of plants and small animals, so the symbiotic bacteria that creates their pigmentation differ as well, with exception to the dweevil we talked about previously, which consumes only nectar. The ice-blown dweevil lives in cold habitats and spews frigid gas, so the workings of its symbiotic bacteria are dulled and it retains its natural color, which is actually white. It's been confirmed that in more temperate climates where food that the fiery dweevil eats is readily available, the ice-blown dweevil's coloration is much peachier. I still don't like them, and it was because of this entry specifically that I got a headache, because it started to generalize all dweevils, but then I had to dig deeper and make sure that I separated them properly based on their actual functions and locations. Many of our other dweevils are unspecific, oh my goodness, or follow the same description, so we will put our unspecified ones here for the safety of our sanity and physical health, such as the Anodweevil, who will instantly fry Pikmin, though the Hydrodweevil is also one that at least does state the following as additional information. The caustic dweevil, or this caustic dweevil, is one member of an insect family known for mimicking objects by carrying things on their backs. Several points of differentiation with other members of this species have been confirmed, such as body color, behavioral patterns, but none of these suggest major deviations in the creature's genetic structure. This makes it clear that it is a relative of the family. When attacked by enemies, the caustic dweevil spits out bodily fluids in response. Space suits corrode and oxidize when they come in contact with this highly acidic liquid. Whatever that is, it looks like water, but do not drink it or you will melt. It is not quenching. Do not drink the spicy water or you will die. And to clarify, yes, it said caustic dweevil, but it is also primarily actually known as the hydro dweevil because, I don't know, they gave it different names. It's like calling burrowing lizards moles, because some people do that, and it's frustrating. But I'm not going to get into that, and we're going to keep moving forward. The venom dweevil also doesn't seem to go after insects or Pikmin, at least based on the following info. The venomed weevil is one member of the weevil family, which is known for mimicking objects by carrying them on their backs. These insects often carry the carcasses of other life forms on their backs. Apparently, it's not for the purpose of transporting them as food, but instead another example of their mimic behavior. The venomed weevil produces 2 different chemical compounds within its body, which form poisonous gas when mixed and expelled. This gas is used only for self-defense. So, I don't know. I'm gonna assume they're eating plants, and it has to be in probably a super dangerous environment in order for it to constantly try to defend itself in such a way. Ultimately, though, they make me incredibly uncomfortable for the reasons I've talked about before with their little hands, so I'm happy to leave them behind and discuss our future creatures now. Groovy longlegs. This species has some remaining organic internal organs, but its carapace and eyes are made up of inorganic material. All 19, count them, 19 of its eyes are actually photoelectric sensors that this species uses to precisely locate its prey. The gas emitted from the posterior of its first leg joints includes a chemical substance that, after making contact with another organism's brain, temporarily controls that organism's actions. The groovy long legs uses this natural phenomenon called the endless dance, sounds like a JoJo stand, to make its prey jump between its legs while it moves around in bizarre rhythms, hence the groovy part of its name. The entire interaction is seemingly odd for a living organism, but the line between organic and inorganic on this planet is not always clear. So, looking at this, we know that it'll stomp Pikmin. I don't know, man. I'm placing it here. It definitely seems way different. It does state that it does actually go after prey, so we're going to assume that it is a heterotroph, unlike the other ones, which didn't state it as clearly, and at least place it here. Also, it's going pretty high up on that heterotroph tier list for the food chain here, because I don't think many creatures are going to be able to outgroove the groovy long legs. Nobody can out Pizza the Hut. Nobody can outgroove the groovy long legs. Anode beetles are basically supercharged electric ladybugs on the surface. This specimen is representative of an insect hybrid that uses electricity in addition to glycogen for its energy. Although difficult to confirm due to their microscopic size, tiny hairs on the creature's leg cause the friction that generates the electrical charge, static electricity. The electrical charge is processed by the creature's internal battery structure and then stored as an electrical field. As the field reaches critical levels, surplus electricity is emitted, resulting in a low voltage current that is transmitted between specimens. It can shock other creatures in the immediate vicinity. Considering this process, it can be surmised that the largest impetus to pack behavior is not so much for the synergistic effect of producing as a pack, as it is to take advantage of this most effective means of group preservation. Bunch of science jargon there. What does that mean in layman's terms? It means bug a group together not to have babies and smash their parts together, but because they want to make a big sparky boom boom that's gonna make all the predators go bye-bye. Any weak creature that is weak alone but powerful in numbers gets points from me. But yes, it is consuming glycogen, which is a stored form of glucose that can be found in microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, or even ourselves and our muscles and our livers. The problem, though, is that these creatures are not actively attacking other creatures, meaning that they are likely just eating bacteria, or potentially, if you really want to go there, they might even accidentally be shocking any of the predators that come after them, and if those predators die, guess what? Go ahead. You're microscopic. Go ahead and eat the glycogen that's in their body. They might not even have to actually kill the creature. They're just directly eating the glycogen. Up next, we're about to have a slew of bulborbs. I'm not going to say the name right, please bear with me. One of the most known creatures outside of Pikmin and main player characters of Pikmin, even if you've never played before. They sit in that center of the triple Venn diagram where we have funny, goofy, and ugly, making them weirdly charming. And the funny thing is, we're about to start with the creature that is called a bulborb, but isn't actually a bulborb, the dwarf bulborb. Although initially identified as a juvenile red bulborb, groundbreaking new research indicates that this creature is in fact a member of the breadbug family. A close relative of the vanilla breadbug, it escapes predation through mimicry. Unique adaptation of the red bulborb's crimson coloration allows the species to safely commingle. Such effective adaptation and obfuscation, basically hiding itself, thank you science words, by a prey species is rare, indicating this clever creature is a master of mimicry. Despite this though, it is known to eat Pikmin, which is not common amongst the young breadbugs. We'll talk about that later. It gets a little weird with them. The albino dwarf bulborb is up next, a bulborb larva after its first molt. Due to its pale coloration, it was assumed to be a mimic when it was first discovered. It was later confirmed to be a true dwarf bulborb. To avoid predation from adult bulborbs, it spends the majority of the daytime hours hiding underground. It becomes more active at night when its paler coloration is more difficult to see. In this state, it is difficult to discern what species of bulborb any given juvenile may be by appearance alone. It's only after a bulborb's second molt that they start to display more distinguishing species characteristics. Looking at this thing makes me a little bit uncomfortable since it kind of just looks naked. Also, we're just gonna make this easy. Most of our heterotrophs here eat Pikmin if they eat any prey at all. So just assume that for the most part, unless I say otherwise. Now we have just the bulborb, which is a large organism that has the familiar mandibles and cranial morphology, basically head skull shape, of the grub dog family, as well as the characteristic bulging eyes. As with most grub dogs, the creature's cranium comprises half of its total length and girth. Showing a scarlet abdomen with white spots, this creature is primarily nocturnal, choosing to prey upon smaller creatures returning to their nests. Originally classified as the spotty bulborb, further research has reclassified this species as the red bulborb. Subspecies of varied colors have recently been discovered, but academics are divided into two rival camps over how to handle their classification. They've apparently got the teeth and everything that they need to be considered omnivores, but yet they ignore spectralids, which are those ghostly creatures that we talked about earlier anyway. Now the next one of the bulborb, grub dog, whatever you want to say, is the jumbo bulborb, who is arguably the top dog of bulborbs and many other species, considering it is just a massive creature. But there are bigger out there, so, you know, say what you will. To be honest, if it is massive and eats things, then yeah, it's going to be a top dog in a very, actually, what is simple food chain that we have in this world. And there's only the exception to those insane biomechanical creatures that break out of the chain that we talked about earlier. During reproduction, after an egg is fertilized by a sperm, any excess chromosomes are usually discarded through a process called meiosis, but occasionally this process fails to occur, and a bulborb individual will develop irregularly due to this chromosomal abnormality. Specimens like this one are stronger than the average bulborb and can exhibit more aggressive behavior. However, they are not able to procreate as they will never reach sexual maturity. Fairly straightforward from there. It's just a mutation by all means, technically. I don't know if I'd want to call it a mutation. That might actually be wrong. It's just an abnormality in the end. That's all that it is, as it states that itself. From here, though, we do drop back down in size and get to talk about more creatures from the grub dog family, with, once again, the exception of our first creature here being the dwarf orange bulborb, who was another breadbug in disguise. An imposter posing as the offspring of an orange bulborb, it resembles the orange bulborb in every way, not just in the obvious shape, but even down to its sharp senses, alert to each sound and movement in its vicinity. Though despite being breadbugs, they actually still do eat Pikmin. So, just wanted to clarify that one. The orange bulborb is a species that boasts a garish color pattern with deep orange body and black spots. The orange bulborb's yellow, bloodshot eyes make it clear that this bulborb is excessively edgy and high-strung, making it much easier to wake from sleep or a deep sleep than other species in the grub dog family. I will at least admit that I like these despite their high-strung nature and just freakiness, because they look like they're tweaking out all the time, a lot more than regular bulborbs. They're just more visually pleasing, I guess, even if their eyes, again, look like little demon eyes. What dwarf bull bears lack in size, they make up in ferociousness. They eat Pikmin quickly and keep eating them as long as a fresh supply is available. They are a spotty bull bear larva in its third stage of development. This creature's body structure is nearing maturation. Oh my goodness. However, unlike mature bull bears, it has yet to claim its own patrol route, and thus it is dependent upon its parents for guiding or guarding direction. Their lips make me incredibly uncomfortable. It's like they just let them get soaked in lemon juice and then dried in the sun. Then we have the adult form of it, of course. A mid-sized subspecies within the grub dog family, the spotty bull bear's unique feeding habits set it apart from other grub dogs. The spotty bull bear patrols a set path, searching for prey, instead of passively feeding on creatures that wander into a limited territorial range. When entering bull bear habitat, it is wise to proceed with extreme caution until the bull bear's patrol path can be clearly identified. I don't know why my mouth has such a problem with saying bull bear, but I'm happy I'll get to stop saying it soon. Honestly, it's just a funny little guy eating whatever comes its way on its patrol path, so if you move, don't move into its territory or you will risk being eaten. Much like more mature specimens, the juvenile frosty bulborb is able to create and carry ice on an epidermis, external skin, layer that promotes extracellular freezing. However, they take an entire night to regenerate their ice, which is why they're often accompanied by adults. Juveniles display a smaller number of spots than the adults, causing some to believe that this was actually a species of mimicking breadbug. However, the results of a further analysis proved this was actually not the case. Our Freezy Boys at least freeze Pikmin first and then eat them, turns them into that sweet frozen treat. Though as it does mature, we get one of the few entries that say more than just Pikmin or insects. A bulborb with large amounts of ice and frost covering its midsection, it's unusual to find ice such as this attached to a living organism, as it's cold enough to freeze small animals and regenerate any ice mass that gets broken off. This bulborb species intercellular stores of sugars, amino acids, and organic acids provide it with a plant-like resistance to freezing, making it possible for the bulborb to touch the ice without freezing itself. They seem so much more dog-like in their appearance. Well, I mean, I guess if dogs were blue and had pink noses and, you know, looked like an off-brand Blue from Blue's Clues, then yeah, they look like dogs, which means they look nothing like dogs. I imagine touching them would be no better than touching a block of ice after you've wet your hand, though. If you want to live the cursed existence, then live the sudden and unfortunate life of the fiery bulborb. Bodily excretions of a highly flammable waxy substance interact with the cell structure of this grub dog's skin, causing a chemical reaction that produces extremely high temperatures. The skin benefits from a spongy cell structure that diffuses the surface heat, protecting the creature's inner organs. Due to the astonishing amount of heat produced by this beast, it should be observed with great caution. This dude has fire boiling on the outside of its skin, literally a part of its body, as it excretes more of this waxy substance, and then is literally melting from the outside in, yet is able to stay alive because of its cellular structure, protecting it from burning all the way through. Does this mean that they ever truly die, or, you know, ever can be put out by fire? Because yes, their fire can be extinguished, and then they'll be all melty until they start on fire again once they excrete more of this substance, because it is a natural thing that they do, meaning that they're never doused from their flames forever. I guess they may be lucky enough to not feel any of it, assuming that their nerves have been completely destroyed at this point, but this is probably the most cursed creature in all of Pikmin, unless someone wants to tell me otherwise, because again, I don't actually know Pikmin. I'm just able to analyze information decently well. And also because Pikmin actually has a really good way of describing all of their stuff, and just takes a little bit of research and science to figure it all out. Good job! The whip-tongue bulborb, instead of the gnashing jaws usually found in related species, it uses its extendable, viscous tongue to capture prey. Even before it opens its mouth, it's recognizable by its tapered snout and black spots against its white back. Some theorize that it evolved its long tongue to snatch prey drawn to high-blooming flowers, but others point out that no infant specimens have ever been seen, suggesting a radically different biological branch. It has only recently been reclassified as part of the grub dog family. I would say it's freaky to imagine its sticky tongue grabbing 5 Pikmin at a time, but honestly, it's no better than an anteater, and I don't see anyone freaking out about those. Bulborb larva. As its name implies, this creature is a bulborb in an early stage of development. Its distinct bulborb coloration has yet to appear, but it already exhibits other uniquely bulborb characteristics. It is capable of hunting nourishment independently without the help of its parents. To some, they're cute, though it's said not to hug them because they are so sensitive that you will kill them with your love. You will hug them and they will pop. Despite that, it can still eat Pikmin. Also, despite not stating what it eats, I'm still keeping the Empress Bulbax in the higher tier of Heterotrophs. Initial observations place doubt on the capability of the grub dog family to support a strong ant or bee-like social structure, but recent studies show the family is capable of such complexity for brief periods when certain external parameters are met. The egg sac of the largest female grub dog within a given range swells to dramatic proportions in response to environmental changes, such as the sudden depletion of prey species. These females temporarily take on the role of pack matriarch. Also, in pack formation, it has been observed that nearly all males not involved in species reproduction undergo natural sex changes, and the characteristics of such specimens are quite intriguing indeed. So, what does this really mean? It means that, to my analysis, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, right? Because I didn't fully read that part, seeing that this happens when there's a depletion in prey species. There's two things happening here. One, it could be because grub dogs may very well attack each other. It's not always a thing, I suppose, but anything desperate enough will cannibalize its own species. And maybe it's providing food for the larger of its species, so that way it doesn't die out. Though alternatively, what could actually and is likely happening is that it knows, oh no, these larger versions of me are gonna die. There's not enough food, prey, to actually sustain life. As such, our job is to now birth a bunch of smaller creatures that will eat smaller food. So instead of going after large prey, which are rarer, it's going to go after the more common small prey, like Pikmin. Meaning that through sheer numbers and having a different diet, their species will not die out. Though I have to admit, while that is cool, anything that does nothing but birth creatures in this fashion grosses me out. I'm supposed to partially be Mr. Nature Man, but that does not make me any more fond of a creature that just gets fat and births more creatures in mass. I just imagine endless dad sounds from them, just a... That is the sound that echoes throughout my mind whenever I think of these things, and I want to move on so that hopefully I restore any level of sanity that I've lost. Emperor Bulbax. There is an L in there. The largest member of the grub dog family is normally found burrowed underground. This camouflage allows the predator to surprise smaller creatures and use its long adhesive tongue to capture prey. The thick hide and angular hump give the organism a distinct rock-like quality. During the rainy season, moss grows freely on its hump, making it nearly impossible to distinguish this lethal predator from stone. They have a low metabolism, are large, and are hidden for so long between meals that they grow moss on their rock-hard body due to the keratin that they have. They are not known to have any natural predators, so they go up high on the heterotroph list. They look like they hold on to an ancient wisdom, but not for anything useful. It'd be the equivalent of an old man that tells you how a screen door is useless in a submarine, or how back in his day, they didn't have therapy. You just cracked open a cold one and pushed it down. I blame the fact that it looks like its lip is more of a mustache, and it has very judgmental eyes. He believes I should be working at a factory filling my lungs with chemicals like a real man. The old get older and have gained royal power as we now have the sovereign Bulbax. An Emperor Bulbax of extremely advanced age, it will no longer display the pack behavior commonly exhibited by younger members of its species. Instead, as an individual ages, it leaves the herd and exhibits more solitary behaviors. It feeds by using its strongly developed legs to leap upon and crush its prey with speed disproportionate to its massive body. To determine the age of any given specimen, you can count the rings of its hide calcified in the form of a carapace. One ring forms roughly every year the creature lives. It's basically a tree. Individuals with over 100 age rings have been discovered so far. The sovereign Bulbax's back is often covered in moss and pteridophytes. On a few occasions, Specimens have been found with a rare specimen or species of mushroom called a bulboral growing on its back. It's basically gone from old man to old druid, so instead of telling me microplastics aren't real, now he's telling me how I don't matter and all things return to the dirt one day. Thank you. We finally get to check off the last of the blowhogs with the tusked blowhog. Similar to an ancestor species of the fiery blowhog, this creature has a pair of sharp tusks that it uses to charge enemies with vigorous violence. It demonstrates its aggressive nature when it pursues its prey and when it's attacked by a predator of its own. In the case of the latter, the tusked blowhog will attack its attacker, causing them to balk while it can dash away to safety. This species also has an extremely sharp sense of smell, which it uses to detect the pheromone-like scent of its favorite food, underground mushrooms. Nice and simple, whatever prey that comes near it, and then its primary food, mushrooms. Not a lot different from, other creatures in our real world. The male sheargrub. This specimen is a male sheargrub. Having lost both legs and wings, the male burrows into the soil and waits to ambush small creatures that pass by. This beast's mandibles can be dangerous, making creatures such as Pikmin easy prey. As I said, the sheargrubs are kind of cute. They remind me of the little squishy things that, explode in the one meme. I have one around here, but I have no idea where it is, so just take the clip of it, I suppose. But yes, more ambush predators to add to the large list. It is odd that we find creatures of large and small size being the ambush type until you start to realize that many cats are that way, and then the T-Rex was also an ambush predator that hunted in packs, which is crazy to think about. Shearwig. Unusual for their genus, flying mandibularids have retained their wings. However, only the adult males of this species can fly. Females of this species spend most of their lifespan underground. They do emerge for a short period after maturation to spawn, but they never metamorphose. It may be small, but it's full of vim and vigor. It hovers in midair, then zips straight to its target, and once it has prey in its jaws, it locks on tight and won't let go. The shearwig, a cunning and fierce survivor, has a death grip on my heart and soul. Now, okay, that's all notes, that wasn't my words. They stop being cute when they have these wings. I like them much better when they're adorable and defenseless, which sounds a little messed up now that I actually think about it. But let's not think about that for too long, as we're going to talk about the sheer flea. The sensory hairs growing on this creature's orange body segments can detect body temperatures, movement, and carbon dioxide levels. It clings to its prey with its claw-like front legs and sucks their blood through its pointed proboscis. Research has found that the sheer flea can store energy created while contracting its bellows-like body in the elastic proteins located at the root of its hind legs, allowing it to repeatedly jump very high. Its reproductive rates are rather explosive. A small group of egg-laying females can boom into a population of over 100 in a month's time. Not only do they decide to stab, and then eat Pikmin, but they will also attach to the player and Awachi, our space dog. They are fleas after all, space fleas. Outside of them eating Pikmin right now, seems like the primary source of food is to just consume blood or whatever is inside of creatures within the Pikmin world, nectar. Either way, they're hunting other creatures. To follow, we have the Joust Mite and the Flighty Joust Mite, both fit with terrifying tongues and false eyes upon their armored carapace. For the Joust Mite, others within this family wear their shells on their bellies, but this one's shell functions more like a helmet. Its wings have atrophied into uselessness, so instead it burrows beneath the ground and pops out only to pierce prey with its needle-like proboscis and drain them of their bodily fluids. Great, more creatures than ensanguinate other creatures. Sounds fantastic and not horrifying in the slightest. Larval joust mites remain underground for years or even decades in some cases. Just keep it away from me. I don't like ensanguinators. They freak me out a little bit. It's a close relative of the original burrow-knit species, but then with the flighty joust mite, it still has the use of its wings. Oddly, it still makes its habitat below ground and employs the same tactic of lying in wait before emerging to strike. The helmet, quote-unquote, protecting its head is functionally as hard as steel due to waxy secretions in its pores, which absorb and redirect any shocks it sustains. oh no, it's vibranium, but as a natural substance for a creature. I mean, probably, if they want to go that direction. I will note that they at least can't pierce the bodies of rock Pikmin, so they are excluded from the prey on the Joust Mites list. Skitterleaf. The skitterleaf is a relative of the pond skater that shed its wings and adapted to life on the ground. With no residual traits of its airborne past, the skitterleaf can neither fly nor skid across the surface of the water. The wings have since evolved into the leaf-like structure on its back, which serves to hide the skitterleaf through mimicry. It appears quite effective, as few predators can see through this clever disguise. The only real reason it's included here, though, is because pond skaters, if it is, with it being related to them, do eat other creatures, so it feels fair to say that they would have similar diets. Smaller insects and other pond skaters are in that list, or in this case, other skitterleafs might be in that list, though they don't eat Pikmin. And then we have the desiccated skitterleaf, which is a different story. The skitterling variant that resembles dead leaves. Its legs have developed in specific ways. The front claws capture prey, while the flat hind legs are suited for running and swimming. Its highly tuned senses keep it still for any creature but Pikmin. Once it gets its claws on its prey, it doesn't easily let go. Recent research has revealed that its camouflage has a secondary purpose beyond hunting. Scavengers are fooled by its disguise into carrying its eggs, thereby expanding the population. These creatures' eyes also remind me not fruits like our other creatures would say, not a fruit, but instead of those big old bulging eyes that we get of like, I think I call them angelfish. I don't know. I keep forgetting their name. Turning them from fascinating creatures into something that just feels uncomfortable because I feel like their eyes are going to just pop at any second. Arachnode. This spider-like creature has distinctive yellow stripes on its black carapace. It spins webs in high-traffic areas and waits for prey to blunder into them. Unlike its relatives in the Arachnorb and Dweevil families, it is ambisexual and has 8 legs, so it is both male and female in one body. Some theorize that its gynecologist, so gynandry, is meant to aid in reproduction, though of course it cannot reproduce on its own. There is, however, another theory that this species is in fact 2 organisms of opposing gender stuck together. But since no one has ever found a 4-legged, single-sexed specimen, this remains speculative. Their bodies kind of remind me of the furrows of lionfish, that same striping pattern that they actually have. Also, whoever got close enough to find out that this is both, or has both sexual organs is a trooper. It's a cool looking creature, but I don't want to even be within eyesight of it. Mitites. These parasitic insects feed on eggs. Thank you, we could move on, but let's round them out. Upon reaching maturity, they excrete a special pheromone that attracts females of particular species, enticing these females to swallow the mitites whole. Pikmin, however, seem to dislike the scent. After entering the host female's body, the mitites lay their own eggs inside the host's eggs just prior to the host spawning. These are as actively parasitic as it gets, and while named after mites, there are other species that do exactly this in the real world. So let's take a tangent and talk about a creature that does do this. Leocochloridium paradoxum. The green-banded broodsac is a parasitic flatworm or helminth. Its intermediate hosts are land snails, usually of the genus Succinia. I don't know some of these words, I'm doing my best. The pulsating green brood sacs fill the eye stalks of the snail, thereby attracting predation by birds, the primary host. And you've probably seen this thing multiple times because when it first was found out, it circulated the internet like wildfire, and people were like, oh my goodness, what is this thing? It's a zombie snail. Now, these brood sacs visually imitate caterpillars, a prey of birds, hence why their eyes look that way. The adult parasite lives in the bird's cloaca, releasing its eggs into the feces. A bit freaky, isn't it? Good thing there's not really a thing that controls us other than the one parasite that cats have that transfer to us and kind of go into our brain and make us like them more, even the smell of their urine, amongst probably other parasites that we don't really know about. Life is crazy. Scutterchuck. Its main offensive strategy is to launch the crystal it carries on its back. Otherwise, it's completely defenseless. In most circumstances, it's a peaceful herbivore whose diet consists primarily of moss. Beautiful. When in danger, however, it wastes no time defending its territory by breaking small rocks and hurling them at the threat. In order to ensure it has a steady supply of rocks with which to defend itself, it shares its habitat with calcified crushblat larvae, so it can make use of the shells they cast off each night. I want to ride it and get launched into the air. Let me get tossed by the living catapult. Just strap a parachute to my back, or hang glider, or something, and let me fly. Despite it looking awkward physically, I like it. It's like a weird little snake with legs, really long legs. Skeeter skate. It skates on water at high speed thanks to tiny hairs on the tips of its feet. These hairs are coated in an ultra hydrophobic substance to minimize friction against the water's surface. Its long proboscis functions as a straw to take in water, which is stored in a reservoir in its head, as well as to spout it as a weapon against small insects. While taking in water, it also takes in microscopic plankton, meaning that its prime means of defense is also a feeding mechanism. That's awesome. And this is a creature that honestly did make me question if other creatures were doing the same thing, eating microscopic plankton, though the entries that we find here throughout the PIKLOPEDIA is actually incredibly thorough. They often at least state that they will eat or like something, or if they do eat anything, what they specifically eat. So I have faith in the idea that those other ones that are more water-based are not like our skeeter skate here, who is enjoying plankton. We have a family member related to the skeeter skate here called the mucker skate, a subspecies of the skeeter skate that's adapted to life in muddy wetlands. It uses its straw-like proboscis, the inside of which is packed with densely grown hair, to capture any plankton living in the mucky water and filter out everything else. When an enemy approaches, it will threaten them by shooting out a mucky substance, or murky substance. This combination of muddy water and gastric juices has a higher viscosity, so it can essentially bury Pikmin and a lot of other stuff in the dirt. Yeah, it might be absorbing a bunch of other nutrients passively as well from any other creatures broken down in the mud, is at least what I'd like to say. I say this because there have been plenty of cases, many even famous cases, where even dinosaurs were well preserved thanks to mudslides burying them perfectly. So, you know, there's the chance that they're getting those extra nutrients and not just actively going after plankton the way that they do. Also, is it bad that I kind of want to pop them and the skeeter skate? They just have a big old bubble for their body. I don't know. Snowflake flutter tail. The cooling cycle in its body uses ammonia as a refrigerant to chill the moisture it absorbs from the air until it reaches a supercooled state. By then spraying it out of the several vents on its belly, the snowflake flutter tail creates a delicate cocoon out of ice to both protect itself and freeze its prey. Its rolled up, spirally proboscis evolved from an upper jaw and can catch and tie up prey with the fine hairs on its surface. Though it mimics a type of swallowtail butterfly, this creature is actually more closely related to moths. One might extrapolate that its ancient ancestor was unable to adapt to the cooling climate and therefore went extinct. That's normal. That's normal adaptation that happens in real life. I mean, creatures will have to slowly evolve through time so that way they can actually live in new environments as climate change does happen, and if it happens too fast, species go bye-bye. It's as simple as that. Now, its face is kind of weird to me because of the proboscis. Remove that and keep the big ol' eyes, and it'll be incredibly cute to me. Although the problem with doing that is that we would lose the fact that it is by all means supposed to look a little bit off from what we would associate with normal butterflies or moths, which tells us that it can potentially be dangerous naturally to our own brains, which, fantastic design in that case. Like Pikmin, the creeping chrysanthemum is a member of a group of creatures with ambulatory root structures. This creature is known as a mimic, but because it is actually a form of plant, this label is not entirely accurate. For unknown reasons, the creeping chrysanthemum's mimicry does not fool Pikmin, perhaps because they share a similar heritage. It relies on preying upon other creatures to provide sustenance, so it has no need for leaves for photosynthesis. Generally speaking, the role of plants within an ecosystem is as a producer species, and thus plants are generally found at the bottom of the food pyramid. However, on this strange planet, the line between producer plants and consumer plants is blurred, and that was straight from the PIKLOPEDIA itself. Mwah! Thank you. And yes, by all means, this is technically not a food chain. This is a food pyramid, but because it's YouTube, if I put food pyramid, people wouldn't be interested. So now that you're some 40 minutes into the video, congratulations, you learned the truth. Anywho, it's just a big old frog that I want to squish. It's also a bit of a land anglerfish, which makes me realize I don't know really any creatures that are like that in real life. Plenty of mimicry out there, you know, trapdoor spiders and stuff like that, but like nothing that's like a landlerfish, as I'm now going to call them until I am corrected. Startle spore. The defining characteristics of the fungi that grow from its head differ from that of the chrysanthemum family's creeping chrysanthemum, but the makeup of the body out of which they grow is mostly the same. As a result, we can theorize that, like fellow Ambuloraticae, the bulbmin, this species is not an evolutionary variation, but that the body is a parasite that is nestled inside a group of mushrooms. Because the hosts are mushrooms, the startle spore cannot photosynthesize. Instead, it gains nutrients by catching prey with highly poisonous fluids or by absorbing the nectar in the ground left behind as creatures killed by its poison decompose. And we're gonna talk more about mushrooms that are ambulatory, can walk around and infect you, turning into, you know, the Last of Us type creatures, or just breaking you down until you die and then get decomposed further. But like, I've always been fond of mushrooms because they're so strange, but these freak me out a little bit, and they are likely infecting other creeping chrysanthemums, meaning that they easily jump above them on this food chain pyramid thing, whatever, no pun intended, and are likely infecting other creatures while we're at it. So, I don't even know. This is where the whole pyramid starts to get complicated, and you start to see the flaws in something like this, and why food webs are more appropriate, but require way more studying. Giant breadbug. This gargantuan species of the greater breadbug family has a torso so perfectly square that it almost seems like it was formed in a mold. For a brief period after birth, the giant breadbug competes for food with smaller breadbugs, but upon reaching maturity, it seeks out much larger prey. This is the primary reason two species with similar feeding habits can coexist in the same habitat, very similar to what we talked about with the Empress bulbax. It's pretty much the same exact thing. Though this is what made me question if the small breadbugs do eat other creatures. There's no real confirmation from what I can see, though we could assume that since they drag them into their den that they might be eating them, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. Once again, I want to eat these bad boys because they look soft and delicious. I don't care if bug is attached to the name, they look like they've been washed with egg yolk and are glistening perfectly like the bread pieces that they are. Let me bake and eat them. Gildemandui. Immediately after hatching, this species presents itself in a gilled, tadpole-like form and grows its legs after about a week. This juvenile Gildemander specimen is estimated to be about 1 month old due to the presence of an oar-like growth on its back and the fact that it has already emerged onto land. The living oar has substances similar to treasure within it, a peculiar scent, and has an effect on both sensors and Pikmin. However, the lantern organ on its head is still undeveloped and can only emit very faint electromagnetic waves. For this reason, juvenile Gildemanders often hide out of sight to avoid Pikmin attacks. Despite its small size, it emits a scent that lures prey just like the adults. These are officially my favorite creature in all of Pikmin, or at least my favorite common creature, I would dare say. And yes, it's mainly because they remind me of Clodsire and seem like they are smiling at me at all times, so I just want to smile back at them. When it grows up, though, it becomes the Gildemander, which just sounds like Charmander and sounds like a Pokemon. Anywho, the oar-like growth on its back is a coagulated bodily fluid that includes a substance similar to sparklium. Whatever that is, sounds like something that sparks and an element, which can make our mechanical sensors go berserk. to use the technical term, quote unquote. This living ore emits a scent that lures the creature's prey, so it's also important for their feeding process. The lantern-like organ atop its head emits electromagnetic waves that are known to affect Pikmin and onions, confusing them into thinking the Guildmander is their leader, allowing it to withdraw Pikmin directly from the onion. However, it cannot go as far as to command them as a squad, so the Pikmin will often hide under cover and are able to avoid ingestion. In other words, can you imagine how terrifying that is to think that, let's put it this way. Let's say, this thing walks into your home, your family, it gets past all your security systems, none of them go off because it's using those electromagnetic waves, and then it looks at your parents and goes, hey, I'm gonna eat you and I'm gonna eat your children. And your family goes, sounds great! And you jump right into its mouth. But it can't directly control you, so you might go near it. Actually, no, you wouldn't even go near it based on those descriptions. You would be afraid and walk away. Meanwhile, your parents would jump into the maw of the beast. Terrifying. Now, it really does seem, despite their size, they really aren't going after any actual big prey. But that is still scary. But also their dopiness and blindness really solidifies them as a Clodsire of the series, and I love them a lot. Mini Snoot Whacker. I swear these names make me feel like I'm speaking the made-up language that I hear from the lovely people I've interacted with from Europe. And before anyone types anything, you are not allowed to talk until you stop calling whipped cream squirty cream, okay? So yes, your language is made up, and I refuse to believe otherwise. Anywho, back to Pikmin. Immediately after birth, the mini Snoot Whacker's skin starts to harden, and before long, it will reach the same impenetrable toughness as that of an adult. Adult Snoot Whackers dexterously use their trunks to grab food from high tree branches, but juveniles consume fruits and nuts that have fallen to the ground, as well as other types of terrestrial flora. This specimen's leg and torso muscles are underdeveloped compared to those in its nose, so they lack the strength to maintain their posture and easily lose their balance. Okay, they may have hit a second favorite because they are just jade elephants. Then they also grow up into the mammoth Snoot Whacker, and that they look dope, honestly. The long nose on this specimen has neither bone nor cartilage, but is made up entirely of muscle and can be flexibly curved and extended. Its tough hide consists of densely layered collagen lattices that cover almost its entire body, leaving only the regular skin on the belly exposed. Okay, so they're like jade turtle elephants. Venn diagram, we hit the center once more. The fully developed trunk is large and quite heavy, so the mammoth Snoot Whacker, usually, the name got me again, rolls it inward to carry it closer to its center of gravity. But if its territory is invaded, it will extend the trunk and flail it around, even using it to strike a perceived enemy. Just like a juvenile Snoot Whacker, their nose comprises a disproportional amount of their body weight, resulting in poor balance. If attacked from behind or from the side, even adults of the species is easily knocked over. I don't really know if elephants can actually be knocked over that easily. I imagine they can't because they actually have a proper balance, so I don't know. Now, they may be thrown lower on the food chain, but once again, don't mistake that for weakness. I'm confident that they would absolutely bop a number of the other creatures on our list with their strength, assuming they don't get knocked over. Sun Squish. I shouldn't have opened my mouth. We are just getting best hits after best hits for creatures one after another with Pikmin. I mean, look at this living sunny side up egg and tell me that's not adorable. A type of primitive organism called a protochordate. I'm in love with this. In its juvenile state, it has a skeleton-like structure called a notochord. It flaps its finned tail to move and lives within other creatures' eggs as it grows. As its body develops, it starts to exhibit mollusk-like qualities, but its highly exposed external stomach can directly digest prey on contact and can also be used for locomotion. Okay, let's just break that down, right? This sunny side up creature lives inside of other eggs. It develops and matures. It is basically a prototype for spined creatures and is a close relative to chordate, back-spined creatures. And then, On top of all of that, it has a little tail that it uses to help move it around, while also having an exposed stomach, directly allowing it to digest or eat other creatures. I love it. I love it. It's so simple on the surface, but I love it. Fulix. A member of the Gulix family, this primitive life form is made up of a single cell. Okay, I somehow missed that when I did my research, and that's amazing, which is quite odd given its size. Its nucleus is shaped like a bulbous star, and individuals move by using the fin at the end of its flagellum-like tail, basically think of sperm, and it has a little whip tail, to quickly expand and contract its gelatinous body. If the nucleus is removed, its soft body loses all structure and splatters. But as long as the nucleus is still alive, the Fulix can return to its original form. Usually, the Fulix will mimic nectar and wait for its prey. Its gel, which includes fire-extinguishing fluids, will then expand to capture and feed on unsuspecting organisms. So even if it's on fire, even if the creature's on fire, like the fiery bullbacks, I don't know if there's an L or not in that one, then yeah, it could still theoretically eat it, even though that creature doesn't go after nectar, but there's the possibility. Look, I just kind of love it when my food just eats me back just like an overly powerful pineapple. It's gonna be low on the list since it is just a creature trying to trap other creatures by mimicry. It's waiting for other small creatures that depend on nectar, which puts a lot of our Autotrophs at risk rather than a lot of our Heterotrophs at risk. Downy Snagret. Due to a common phenomenon known as imprinting, this baby will recognize anything that it sees or hears within a given length of time after it hatches as its parent, and consequently follows it around. So you're saying I could have an army of these little babies if I just, you know what, don't say that, don't say that. I think you get the idea. Make the parents go extinct, make the parents go extinct. That's a little extreme. Either way, the Downy Snagret has two specific conditions for imprinting though, so you can't just, steal an egg. The first is that the target must be tall and blue. I'm neither tall nor am I blue. And the second is related to the sound of its cry. This means that it will never make a mistake with something as small as we are and will instead recognize it, or rather us, as food. So we can't live our dreams of having these as our own, babies. Since it is still a fledgling, the Downy Snagret does not go underground to feed. Instead, it stays on the surface where there is plenty of food. It looks harmless enough, but beware. Its parents may be hiding nearby until the baby is old enough to fend for itself. So, Mama Bird's gonna help it get its food, otherwise it's just eating whatever makes noise and whatever it actually relatively can. Which is very true, or proves to be true, when it grows up into the burrowing Snagret. Something I will always remember thanks to Smash Ultimate. The majority of Snagret species lie in wait to ambush and capture prey, with a body type perfectly adapted to such sudden strikes. It violently attacks small, surface-dwelling insects. Distributed across a relatively wide range, subspecies of Snagret suited to the varying soil conditions have emerged, making the Snagret the most geographically represented species besides the Bulborb. So, not only are they of fair size and attack whatever they deem as prey through surprise, primarily looking at insects, and Pikmin for that matter, but they are a species found in many places, only being found in less places, arguably, than the Bulborb and, arguably again, the Pikmin species. This is likely because, for some reason, they both, those two, just adapt to any environment. The Bulborb's less graceful in doing so, as, that one fiery Bulborb just kind of goes Waddlequaff. I don't like saying that name. It feels dirty, and I'm not explaining that further as to why. Its overdeveloped respiratory muscles allow it to suck in large volumes of air through its long, thick beak while feeding. That made it feel worse. Its feathers are too small to use for flying. The current theory is that this is due to its niche position in the ecosystem being quite secure, thanks to a lack of natural predators and little competition for food in its habitat. However, with the expansion of Pikmin territory, recently its numbers have been gradually declining. Now, they do actually eat Pikmin, otherwise I would have said they only eat nectar or, I don't know, anything that can produce nectar, I do suppose. It would make sense considering it wasn't having trouble with food until the Pikmin showed up, who only eat nectar. Or attack whatever creatures attack them and then throw them into the onion, whatever. Personally, I'm okay with these Autotrophs struggling. I do not feel comfortable with those weird chicks. They look both 3 and 30 years old at the same time. Our cake creatures are an interesting species that I personally love for their methods of getting food, which are all similar to each other. We have the Scorch, Shock, and Freeze cakes. Starting with the Scorch cake, related to bivalves, it uses its internal muscles to dexterously manipulate its upper and lower shells. This ability allows it to squash eggs and small ambularices, I said it right, like Pikmin, thus returning nectar to the ground. It then feeds off the microorganisms and moss that benefit from the nectar. To further facilitate the growth of its food, the Scorch cake will secrete oils from its body through its shell and onto the ground, and then sets that area on fire, perhaps as a way to improve soil fertility. So not only are they smart enough to indirectly use Pikmin as bait, but they are also improving soil quality through other methods to increase the amount of creatures that will gather over time. Genius creature, I love them. The other two do very similar things, but through their own respective elements. Shock cake has muscular organs that can create electricity by using ion gradients within densely layered rows of electricity generating cells, which are arranged in an asymmetrical series. My brain did not put that together. It uses its plug-like protrusions to instantly shock its prey and then squashes it. There we go. The caveman came back out, shock, boom, and then follow the same process as our Scorch cake essentially. The Freeze cake, though, is the only outlier that may outright eat their prey. By emitting frigid air from one side of its shell, it can freeze and squash any prey that approaches too closely. Food can be hard to find in extremely cold climates, so one theory is that this species has developed some kind of mechanism that allows it to store its prey for long periods of time. This is a very common trait amongst our frigid friends. Killing, then storing prey for the long term in case they run a little dry in terms of their food, and this of course is something we can see in real life, where either a creature will store food, moles, for example, will actually create a storage of food for when, things start to run a little dry, or alternatively, you have bears, which will stock up and then hibernate. Puffstool. A type of ambulofungus, the current working theory is that the puffstool evolved from a more common species of fungus that gained animal-like characteristics over time, including the ability to walk. When it senses danger, it will scatter spores from under its cap, releasing a hallucinogen that confuses its attackers. The hallucinogenic compound in the spores is only effective against this species' natural enemies, the Pikmin, causing them to mistake it for their leader. Pikmin who fall into this trap are then used as workers to maintain nutrition or defenses for the puffstools. In other words, they are just the mushroom version of Pikmin in terms of biology, and they are competitors with each other. Ambulatory fungus instead of ambulatory flora, plant. And I love them, minus the part where they will use their spores on living creatures to infect them. That part is a little bit scary. If it weren't for that, I would have put them down with the rest of our normal decomposers. This is active parasitic predation in my eyes. Their relative, the toxstool, isn't much different, though I will at least place them at the bottom of the heterotrophs still. The toxstool, much like the puffstool, is neither animal nor fungus, but a mix of the two, or, again, an ambulofungus. It doesn't serve as a producer or consumer role in the ecosystem, but functions instead as a decomposer, according to the notes within the game, and I don't care what it says. It may not directly be a direct consumer, but it is definitely being a monster, and I am placing it as a heterotroph. I do not care at that point. It primarily parasitizes, oh my goodness, other living organisms by blanketing them with its spores. However, the toxstool can infect a deceased specimen as well. Its hyphae is able to move the muscles and control the body as if bringing it back from the dead. The way the fungal filament grows differs based on the host organism. In some cases, they may cause the host to wander around in search of food to facilitate a more nutrient-rich fungal culture medium. They can also just use the host as a means to scatter more spores. Again, The Last of Us, but as just a not so obviously scary mushroom just walking around. And it gets worse with what we're going to talk about next. Moldy dwarf bulborb. Gross. This is an example of a young bulborb body that has been infected by fungal filaments. Now a host, it can unconsciously continues to seek out and ingest food, all the while scattering large amounts of spores out of these spore sacs on its back until it can no longer move. After all host body activity ceases, the specimen mutates into a fungal culture that will eventually become a juvenile toadstool. What did that basically just tell us? This creature walks around, eats as per its natural instinct, spreading spores around until the fungal infection parasiting its body breaks its whole body down to the point where the muscles can't and the tendons can't move anymore. It collapses and then decomposes, transforming into the toadstools that we just talked about. Ugh! It's so cool, but so scary. And of course, along the same lines as this, we have the moldy slooch. Both the nervous system and slime-producing organ of this specimen have been invaded by fungal filaments, which is why it scatters spores as it moves. It will also shake spores onto other creatures, thus infecting new hosts and expanding the toadstool's habitat and range. Once the host body ceases to function, it can no longer serve as a fungal culture medium because its bodily fluids dry up and the corpus shrinks. At that point, the host body is abandoned. So there's no form of moisture, which is very important for mushrooms because I believe mushrooms are often between 70 and 90% like water or fluid for the most part, which explains why when you cook them, they kind of shrink down so much, very similar to spinach. And with a slug, snail kind of thing going on here, it makes sense that they would then be abandoned. It doesn't actively eat anything, at least not that it states here, but it definitely infects other creatures, which is why I'm keeping it here. Pyroclasmic slooch, the thing in which it infected to become the previous thing. A species of terrestrial snail coated in flammable mucus instead of the traditional shell. The creature stays lubricated through constant secretion of mucus so that the fires never reach its skin. The most fascinating aspect of these creatures is their instinctive ability to avoid causing widespread fires by carelessly brushing plants. It flat out does state that it does eat Pikmin, and honestly, snails are all over the place in terms of their diet. I mean, some like these scaly foots that look like volcano, or that you might call volcano snails, don't eat because they have bacteria within them that fuels them and just keeps them alive, as they in turn provide the bacteria with whatever it needs somehow. And then other snails or slugs will go as far as cannibalizing their own kind. Very big range. Bearded amprats. The hair covering its face works as a capacitor. It charges electricity by rubbing the hair to build static, then discharges it at enemies intruding on its territory. That is Pokemon as all get out. It's more territorial than aggressive, attacking only when threatened rather than to hunt prey. It has several qualities unique to this ecosystem, such as breastfeeding its young, which may someday give rise to a whole new taxonomy of fauna here. This thing makes me incredibly uncomfortable, and I can only pray I never see it in the hallways at 3 a.m. because I will want to dropkick it, but I would likely die in doing so. With its mouth open and beard expanded, it is even scarier, and it does eat Pikmin. Mamuta. Great name? Looks like a Yeti. The imbalanced asymmetrical arms of the Mamuta are among its most notable features. Feeding on seeds and fruit, the Mamuta is known to actually sow and grow plant species. While other species have exhibited seed-bearing behavior for the purpose of storage, the Mamuta is the only species so far known to actually cultivate fields of plants. Finally, another nice creature that I can hopefully just chill with because I was worried we were going to get back into the horror of Pikmin here. Now, I do want you to keep this creature in mind. I like how I point this way, but I always put the images over here because I am my own editor. I don't have money to pay an editor. Plus, I enjoy editing by all means. But either way, I digress. Keep the Mamuta in mind because it's going to be very important for a very, very incredibly terrifying and dangerous creature we will talk about later. Porcilion. I keep saying it with a Spanish accent and I can't stop it. Its needle-covered armor is soft and quite exposed. Furthermore, it has a cowardly disposition, so when it senses even the slightest danger, it shoots out its spikes. Regenerating new spikes requires significant amounts of caloric energy, so this creature requires significant amounts of food. This likely explains why, when it scrounges through garbage, it sucks up not just the insects it finds, but also the trash itself. They have ingested a few of the SS Dolphin's parts too, but those could never be mistaken for trash. So it is literally eating everything it can while being small and non-combative. I can kind of respect it to some degree. It's just an armadillo with a spiky ladybug shell in my eyes, or whatever that one alien from Lilo and Stitch is that says that Stitch is going to Yarth, which may have also been armadillo inspired now that I think about it. Blowhogs come in a trio here and once again look very squeezable despite their spiky body. I imagine they feel like a soft rubber, and I don't know if I can control myself from trying to touch them. The problem though is that they do float in the air and they are huge creatures, like a blimp if you would, comparable from what I could see with the Pikmin hub. Let's start with the puffy blowhog. This species of blowhog uses internally generated hydrogen to inflate a flotation bladder and hover above the ground. The creature's electrified pulse creates a sash of color that flows along the surface of its body, making it a particularly beautiful blowhog species. Precisely how it is able to internally stabilize its highly explosive hydrogen and simultaneously generate electricity remains a mystery. Because if you did not know, if you get one bit of that electricity through that hydrogen area, this thing goes boom without a doubt. Now, the puffy blowhog blows leaves and grass around to eat the insects underneath. It maintains mid-air buoyancy by using its fins and releasing air through the blowholes. This enables it to float effortlessly even in the breeze. In times of danger, the puffy blowhog can decompress its flotation bladder for a rapid escape from predators. So, just insects. Great! That makes my survivability increase when I decide to make bad decisions and try to squeeze this thing. Moving on to the icy blowhog, this creature possesses 3 lungs, an air sac used as its primary respiratory organ, a flotation bladder that gives its buoyancy, and a cold sac that stores cold air. Like the puffy blowhog, its buoyancy is a result of the hydrogen produced by electrolysis. Its icy breath is condensed carbon dioxide, much like the snowy blowhog. Different species within the blowhog family have many features in common when you look closely at the structure and characteristics of their internal organs. I simply assume they also eat what bugs they can, since they have no directly stated different diet. Lastly though, the only one I wouldn't want to be near is the withering blowhog. It is a close relative of the puffy blowhog, but its breath is significantly weaker. However, its breath does contain a petal withering plant hormone that causes flowers to instantly lose their petals. Although its breath has not been studied in great detail, analysis of the chemical compounds involved hold great promise for the biotechnology sector. Look, all I'm going to say is that if it can wither flowers with a breath, I don't want to risk what it could do to me and my lovely purple Pikmin. Actually, we know what it does to Pikmin, which it makes them lose their flowers, and then they just have a leaf afterwards, but that's besides the point. Lesser spotted jellyfloat. A blue, rather small jellyfish that lives on land, it has no nematocysts, which are characteristic of jellyfish, on its tentacles and 3 oral arms, and it floats in the air, sucking up prey that comes near it. So, in other words, it's not going to sting you, but it is going to suck up prey. It takes advantage of the difference in atmospheric pressure between its body and the air outside, in which it is allowed to vigorously suck up prey with the air. Because its digestive organs are small and immature, it takes a long time to digest its prey. It is also a native species that gradually lost its habitat due to loss of food to the non-native greater spotted jellyfloat, which we will actually talk about next, but it is interesting to think that despite these similar names, they are not related to each other, and in fact, the greater one is an invasive species. Vivid pink coloration is the most noticeable characteristic of this floating life form. This invasive species is not native to the region, having appeared to have recently arrived on wind currents. The luminescent organs atop its head attract prey, which it then sucks up and consumes with its lower orifice. Unlike jellyfish, The jellyfloat's tentacles also do not have nematocysts, so there is no danger in touching them. So, yeah, they float in the air if that wasn't already clear. Also, as a side tangent, I love wearing button-ups that have, like, medium or small designs on them. My favorite one is actually a close friend of mine, being Heals for Life, who is also in my D&D Pokemon series, Pokemon Star Science. You should go check that out. There's a playlist for it, and we play every last Friday of the month on a live stream. But anywho, back on track, he has a button-up that has a bunch of jellyfish on it, and it's genuinely perfect. And I love it. I get a little jealous of it. But that should tell you how I feel about jellyfish, and actually these creatures in particular. So, let's move on. Woolpole. The yellow wallyhop spawns in early spring, laying its eggs on low-hanging tree branches and shrubs growing in or near lakes and ponds. Such unorthodox amphibious behavior is a defense mechanism protecting the eggs from predation by blue Pikmin and water dumples. The wallyhop's wild hopping near the shoreline in early spring is thought to be a method of driving predators away from the Woolpole eggs. So this is a really weird one, because this is the only entry that directly states it is hunted by blue Pikmin. But I want you to remember that Pikmin eat nectar, but they will gang up, if necessary, to defeat any creature in order to feed their onion and create more Pikmin, just to kind of clear the air on that. In other words, I would like to kind of state now, because I don't remember if I said it already, that Pikmin are kind of the bottom and top of the food chain. It just depends on how many of them there are and how ambitious they're feeling. I will admit now that while also scripting this, I almost kept typing out now we get to its evolution instead of when it grows up. That's what being a PokeTuber does to you. Again though, with enough support, I like to look at more ecology and lore for other games, at least once a month. Anywho, the yellow wallyhop. This magnificent specimen has remarkably bright coloration compared to the rest of the Amphituber family, as well as 3 lateral spots. This species seems to have lost some swimming proficiency with the evolutionary adaptation that granted it greater jumping ability. The yellow wallyhop inhabits aquatic shallows and shows a instinctive drive to jump upon and squash smaller creatures. They will first face their prey, squash them, then eat them. This is the way of the hops. But we have additional hops to talk about, starting with just the regular wallyhop. It is believed that juvenile wallyhops were once carried by underground currents into caverns where they thrived in the dark habitat. This troglodytic, species of wallyhop's coloration results from generations of cave dwelling and lack of sunlight. Basically, they just got super pale. Comparative differences between the size and shape of this wallyhop and other species are thought to be the result of natural selection at work, choosing traits better suited to life in a subterranean environment. Again, cave wallyhop is all that sounds like to me, and unlike our other frigidly white creatures, this one is a little bit more endearing to me, maybe because it looks like it has orange chicken feet. Though the last wallyhop before we get into the big boy is the chili hop. When squashing prey with its mighty leap, the chili hop secretes a bodily fluid made up of ammonium nitrate, urea, and water. This causes an endothermic reaction that rapidly freezes its prey, making its attacks all the more lethal. Basically, endothermic, endothermic, and exothermic. Release heat, endothermic, absorb heat. So yes, the liquid is absorbing the heat from the creature. Okay, that makes sense. And honestly, that just sounds like it just sounds like it's peeing on the creature, which yes, that I'm gonna call them pee eaters, and you can't convince me otherwise, because urea is transported out of the body through urine after all. So yes, they technically are killing the creature, then peeing on it to freeze them, and then eating their frozen prey, which they release their fluids onto. Kind of gross when you put it directly like that. So let's move on to the Master Hop, the final boss to the IHOP franchise, clearly. It's widely believed that yellow wallyhops and other related species can continue to grow until they start breeding, but after that, their growth rate plummets. So never have babies and grow to infinite sizes, grow beyond the universe. However, in safe environments, ones that lack natural predators, for example, some individuals of this species may forego reproduction altogether and continue growing until they reach gigantic proportions. The yellow wallyhop's telomerase enzymes are particularly active, which prevents their body's cells from aging. Under the right conditions, it's not unusual for some individuals to reach over 50 years in age. They all look very squishable, and I don't think that needs anything more to be said about them. Although, this reminds me very much of, like, lobsters, which can theoretically be immortal. There are a number of creatures, honestly, that can be immortal. There's, like, jellyfish that will create an exact copy of themselves right before they die, and then their polyps are, like, perfect copies of them, and they grow up to be the same exact thing, which is really weird when you think about it that way. Some jellyfish can just be really old, and then there are lobsters out there where, like, as we get older, as we grow up from children, we do produce a protein that helps us grow and replaces cells faster than they die until we reach a certain age, in which case they start to match. So we are replacing cells at the same rate that we are losing cells, and it's all because of a certain protein, or at least partially because of a protein that we produce within our body that basically tells our body to do this. Well, by those same standards then, a lobster constantly produces that protein for the entirety of its life. As such, if in a perfect scenario, perfect food, perfectly clean, could mold and replace its shell as necessary, so that way microorganisms don't take advantage of it, or other predator species don't try to kill it, then you could theoretically have an immortal and infinitely growing in size lobster. And that's what the Master Hop makes me think about. Anywho, let's move on to the water dumple. More squishable friends are here in the water dumple, which is a carnivorous species of marine life. The water dumple uses its oversized jaws to capture its prey. The mandibles of the water dumple extend halfway across the length of its body, and its large gullet enables the predatory fish to consume large quantities of food quickly and efficiently. Water dumples travel in schools, posing a great threat to anything that enters the water they patrol. This aquatic creature is a close relative of the bulborb, and it is said if it has a big mouth, then it loves to eat Pikmin. Avoid the water dumple's lethal jaws and send a handful of Pikmin to attack from behind. Scary fish, not a friend. I don't care what Bruce says. Make this one into food, Louie. You know what to do. Puckering Blino. Many assume it's underdeveloped due to its large eyes and lack of fins, but this is simply its normal, fully grown form. Though its dorsal and ventral fins have atrophied, the long caudal fin helps to compensate for this. It can leap high enough out of the water to catch low-flying prey. The scales comprising the round patches along the sides are known to turn light pink during breeding season. Oh, a little signal right there, huh? It's a weird little flying fish, though. I don't like the name because of the word pucker, but they look very cute. Their overall design being a little bit endearing, and it helps that purple is my favorite color. Prickle Puff. This thing makes me think of Cetitan, just a spiky land whale, but in the water. Its hidden spikes evolved from scales that were once on its forehead. The Prickle Puff uses them to charge and chase off unknown creatures that enter its territory. Its liver and ovaries contain powerful nerve toxins accumulated from ingesting shellfish and algae with trace amounts of poison. These toxins not only function as alternative pheromones, but also seem to keep predators at bay. However, once it is dead, the Pikmin have no issues carrying this creature back to the onion, where the poison is broken down into valuable nutrients. In other words, it's just a weird pufferfish, because pufferfish do the exact same thing. They eat other creatures, and then their toxins from their digestion, or whatever is created within their body during their digestive process, is then what helps them produce toxins within their body, which they release through their spikes and through their skin, which is why they poison you when you touch them. Aristocrab offspring. A juvenile, peckish aristocrab, small in size, its right pincer is only half grown. Because of this, it often hunts by hiding underground and lying in wait to ambush its prey. Generally, crabs pass through the larval stages Zoea and Megalopa as they approach juvenile crabhood. Instead, though, the peckish aristocrab is born with a body shaped like an onion, absorbing its nutrition through the ground and sprouting legs as it grows. Perhaps it's a close relative of species in the Ambuloratidae class. I'm never gonna get that right on the first try. Opportunistic omnivore that is doing some plant biz. Got it. I already like crab and never eat it, and it looks like an onion, so it makes me kind of want to just peel it and consume it, which sounds incredibly horrible considering it is a full-on living creature with eyes and everything like that, but I mean, it's clearly part plant, so don't think too much about it. Its parent, of course, or what it will hopefully, or eventually turn into, I don't know if I want to say hopefully because it gets big, is the peckish aristocrab. Its unnaturally large claw is used for catching prey, for self-defense, and most surprisingly, for its mating call. After all, you gotta... Most aspects of the aristocrab's life revolve around it, which may explain why they became fearful and docile, or may become so when the claw is damaged. It would also account for the claw's remarkable regenerative capabilities, which can restore it completely in a single night. It is also known to blow bubbles when under attack, but this is a result of it venting from the wrong discharge valve when under extreme stress. Instead of it going down the wrong pipe, it comes out the wrong pipe. Now, it is a fairly big boy, so it can be a little higher on the list as a treat. Grub chucker. Wow, I wonder what it does. It probably gives great hugs, right? Wrong. This bipedal creature walks upright, so its motion is noticeably slow, but the long reach of its pincers is useful for catching prey and tossing it into the wide mouth on top of its head. When young, its mouth stays closed, and the grub chucker lives on things like shellfish, nuts, and fruits, eating using these small trophi located behind the feelers below its eyes. It gets creepier the more you talk about it. As it grows, its sincipital mouth opens, the mouth on top of its head, and it can start eating larger quantities of food. It's like a trash compactor. It has few natural enemies, primarily due to its height. However, it's often found in dimmer wetlands and or underground to protect the soft top of its shell from the sun's rays. I'm good. I'm not going underground. I don't want to be near this thing. Great colors, great design, spooky monster that I should stay far away from, and especially because of those SpongeBob Coral Blue number 5 lips that it has. Hermit Crawmad. Looking at the eyes and sickle-shaped legs characteristic of squealas, one would think this is a squeala relative. In fact, it is a relative of the hermit crab. This species, however, has migrated from seaside life in a shell and instead inhabits burrows in the ground. While its legs appear sickle-like, they are pincers it uses to snap at prey. It prefers to feed on small creatures that pass by its lair, dragging them inside to eat them. Gotta love creatures that drag you into their den, kicking and screaming before they kill you and eat you. Just please, if this ever happens to me somehow, I beg that the universe grants me mercy and just right off the bat, right? I do not want that terror to happen if I'm already destined to die in that moment. Also, since it is a relative of a hermit crab, we could easily assume that this is just going to be an opportunistic omnivore added on or supporting the information that the hermit crawmad does give us. Bug-eyed crawmad. Like its close cousin, the hermit crawmad, it makes its home in a burrow rather than a shell. It has abnormally overdeveloped eyes with which to detect prey in cloudy water or low visibility mud. These enormous eyes can perceive circular polarized light as well as the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum. It is well protected from predators, allowing it to live for upward of 50 years and grow to immense size by repeated ecdysis? That's a new word for me. Let's find out what that means. The process of shedding the old skin. Oh. Okay, fancy science words all over again. I apologize. Either way, it just goes back to that lobster thing all over again. Pearly clam clamp. It's a clam. You can imagine what it does. Except you can't, because nothing follows the normal rules in Pikmin. Using the pearl that takes shape inside of its body as bait, this creature lures prey into its interior and traps it within its shell to feed. It's also worth noting that this pearl may just be an amalgamation of outside materials wrapped in a viscous gelatin exterior. In other words, this is not an actual pearl that is formed as pearls are. On the frequent occasions when it cannot gather food for itself, this creature can also obtain nutrients when the symbiotic algae within its body photosynthesizes. For this reason, it can often be found with its mouth open on shoals or sandy beaches that get lots of sunshine. Pretty dope to have another symbiotic action situation going on here, I will at least admit. Before we move on to TODDLERS. Now we'll have our Bloister family here, as the TODDLERS is a species of creature that has yet to fully evolve from shelled mollusk to the more advanced Bloister. Compared to the Bloister, this creature is substantially smaller. The fact that its mandibles do not protrude as significantly as the ranging Bloisters is due in part to the fact that, like most mollusks, its vital organs are located deep within the creature's carapace. The flower-like appendage on its back is actually a gill. It prefers a watery habitat from which it can capture unsuspecting small prey with its sticky tendrils. Ugh. I don't like the way it looks at me. I'm not sure it would ever be something I want to get close to, as even before I read all the information on it, it was sending off warning signals in my brain telling me not to go near it. And clearly, my instincts were correct. Bloom Cap Bloister. It looks like a smashed pancake slug with a blue gazebo on its back and a peach flowering from its plant on top. Its feeler-looking mouth also creeps me out. Now, the origin species from which the ranging and TODDLERS evolved is this Bloom Cap Bloister. It still carries a large shell on its back. The exposed head and legs are covered by a layer of tough muscle, so it barely moves even when attacked. On the other hand, it has extremely sensitive flower-like gills that are characteristic of the mollusking family. When the gills are touched, the Bloister cannot breathe and must open its shell, exposing its soft body. Amphibious with a gentle demeanor, it simply swallows up anything that happens to enter its field of vision, kind of like a living vacuum cleaner. Thank you for cleaning our oceans, Bloister. Candy Pop Bud. What looks like the interior of a flower is actually an insectivorous leaf that developed into an organ. This organ releases a sweet scent from its central pistil, luring small insects into its interior and trapping them. The DNA of those captured organisms is directly absorbed by the plant's cells, which might indicate that this species is attempting to evolve at an astounding speed. But in most cases, these cells essentially self-destruct. The bud then releases Pikmin seeds of the same color, and the plant withers. Muscle fibers, extremely similar to those of an onion, were also found in this species, so one could hypothesize that a candy pop bud is an underdeveloped onion. However, there aren't enough details to confirm this theory either way. Not much to say really, it's probably a creature most like what we find in our own world, despite the rapid evolution and DNA absorption part and the muscle fibers, and okay. Once again, it's nothing like anything we have in our world. I thought I had something going on there. Let's move on. Bog Swallow. This creature just creeps me out, mainly because it looks like a maggot with big, red, dry lips, and I'm already not a fan of maggots, so this makes me super uncomfortable, and it was to the point where I didn't even realize that it actually had legs until the tail end of my research here. This species prefers to inhabit cloudy, stagnant water like that in swamps, and it spends most of its life buried in mud and hiding. Using its 6 eye-like sensory organs, it can detect minute movements in the water and vibrations on nearby land. It will then forcefully leap out of the water and suck up its prey to feed. No, I don't like it. I don't like it. With its entirely cartilaginous skeleton and somewhat primitive features, like its round, chinless mouth, it appears to be some sort of primeval creature. Great. Nature thinks that this is a perfect species, just like crocodiles, alligators, and crabs. Exactly what I needed to hear. Crusted Rumpump. That sounds like something I would rather not touch with my bare hands, just judging by the name alone. I'm going to say it normally, Crusted Rumpump. And looking at this thing that looks like a scorpion soldier makes me, actually confirm that, and that I shouldn't even be within eyesight of this thing. Mind you, we are now going to basically just be talking about the big boy bosses from here on in, so you can imagine the damage they cause and what they do. Its body is covered in a hard carapace, and it has an extremely ferocious personality. It spreads its sharp-fanged jaws to catch its prey. The Crusted Rumpump suffers from poor vision, but it uses the fine hairs on the lower part of its tail and the ball-shaped sensory organ at the tip to detect faint quasi-electrostatic fields emitted by other organisms. In short, it has other ways to sense its predators and prey. So it does have predators out there. Electrostatic fields and magnetic fields are also used and sensed by creatures in real life, especially sea creatures, which is wild to think about, but it's out there in nature. You gotta have some sort of methods to survive. So knowing that is the case for this creature is not a huge surprise, but still very cool nevertheless. I'd like to keep it very far away from me still, though, please. Oddly enough, I did actually, initially, miss the Arctic cannon beetle, which does eat Pikmin, unlike the rest of the cannon beetles. Upon reaching maturity, the blowhole on its head closes, leaving in its place the pointed crest of the Arctic cannon beetle's shell. In order to get enough food in nutrient deficient environments, adult specimens start breathing through their mouths. Some experts have posited that this adaptation causes the species to lose territorial competitions with the armored cannon larva, driving it into colder environments. Though this beetle has increased suction strength, it must ventilate via a spiracle on its abdomen and open its shell to avoid rapid body inflation, which means that if it didn't open it up, it would go boom. These are arguably in my top 5 for cool creatures, no pun intended, that I have seen during this research, though that just, again, might be my weakness for, like, these types of beetles in general. Get ready for a really scary one. The smoky prog. The smoky prog's body is constantly deteriorating, so collecting a living sample has proven difficult and research into the species has progressed at a glacial rate. However, though, by examining the genes adhered to the smoky prog's eggs, it has been confirmed that they are, in fact, Mamuta eggs. Remember that creature I told you earlier? The very peaceful creature that knows how to go through agriculture practices? Yeah, that thing is this thing. This discovery allows for the possibility that Mamuta that do not develop properly and hatch become smoky progs. If, hypothetically, a Mamuta were to remain above ground at night and absorb glow sap, that might impact the nutrient levels within its egg yolk. That change could lead to the embryo's inviability or break down its enzymes, then maybe it becomes this thing. The fact that something as docile, intelligent, and it's a creature that is agriculturally intelligent. It's sowing seeds. It knows how to cultivate the fields, and then it becomes the very opposite of that. Something that is so terrifying. It's large and will suffocate the life out of anything that comes near it. That is bad, like incredibly bad. So it's really cool and another one of my favorites, but I'm gonna tell you now, if there is anything biological going near this thing, it will suffocate and die. Ancient Sirehound. Big, I mean big boy time. If we harvest mesenchymal stem cells from this gigantic canine creature and cultivate them with glow sap, the generated serum could or should return Owachi's leafified tail to normal once administered. These results would indicate that 99.9% of the canine creature's DNA matches Owachi's, and that the only difference between Owachi and moss may be the natural presence or absence of a leaf tail. If these two theories are proven to be true, it would suggest the possibility that this ancient creature is a common ancestor to two canine species from vastly remote star systems, and that perhaps there are even more hidden secrets out there that could hint at a fascinating yet inconceivable truth the universe has yet to reveal. What that secret is that everything is related. Despite the difference, despite the distance, that everything has a single common ancestor, and in the case of Pikmin, it's something that is out there in the universe, somewhere well beyond the stars, that we can't even imagine. And I think that is so cool. And it's a galactic ancestor of all space dogs, if that is true. And it looks incredibly old for that matter. It kind of has like a mop for a face. Let's just give it a grooming that might take multiple days to do, thanks to its size, and we'll be fine. Really cool. ideas going behind that one. And because I make the rules, so I get to break them by putting our finale creature here, which is not actually a boss, we have the Water Wraith. All that is known about this creature stems from a few sightings deep underground. All reported sightings feature the same core set of details: a giant, viscous form with a clear, hazy sheen, not unlike hard candy. One theory holds that it may be the ectoplasmic incarnation of a kind of psychic phenomenon, but as is usually the case with such theories, it is very difficult to prove. All witnesses report being suddenly overcome with fear upon sighting the creature, approaching a state of panic and near insanity. In fact, every report contains an inordinate amount of extremely vague details, which has led to suspicions that exhaustion and fear have caused some simple phenomenon to be viewed as a living creature. It may not eat anything, but by all means, it cannot be hurt, and it will attack you with its big old roller pin until that is broken, and then it will just get another one, and then it will hunt you down again if you continue to bother it. It is death incarnate. It does not have to defeat you now, but it will get you eventually, when you are tired and when you cannot run anymore, and then that is when it wins the war, and I love it. But that covers the complete Pikmin 4 food chain. Again, if you love this and you want to see other franchises covered by this channel in the future, then support the channel in any way that you can. Pokemon will always be a staple of this channel because I love it too much, but once a month, it would be really cool to look at other franchises, their ecological systems, maybe lore, their food chains, whatever it is, you name it. So, subscribe, share the channel around everywhere, and even become a member for as little as $3 a month, as it makes a massive difference if everyone were to become a member. But before we go, as always, let's shout out all of our members. Thank you to all of our members, starting with the gods of Hope, Biggins, Heals for Life, and Vanity Lemon. Follow up our champions, Biggins, Elizabeth, Omicron, Nias Costa, Andrew Murch. Then our Knights of the Court, Warren Hemphill, Crombo, Dylan Perrine, Vanity Lemon, Double, Plow, Annie Stone, Allen, Heals for Life. Then all of our Wanderers, Malachi Burkhardt, Carlisle, Heather Wesley, Ironbear, Mariana Scobie, Michael Schwarman, Uncanny Kenshi, Takumi Dutsu, Firebird, Floyd, Quizzical Quackaval, Reyes, Cooper with a little heart, Zachara, Arknights, Izakali, Tyrone, I, Chris Williams, Astro is Alive, Nim the Gudra, Harrison, Alma, Elma, Soren, Sun and Moon, Jace Chu, Lexa Vision 420, Taco Sturman, Hayomaru, Anubix, Shoot Past the Limit, Base Lord, Max Supreme, Noisy Bones, Mysterious Militant, The Music Man, P-Cone, BBX, Chris Solis, Flame Ninja 30, Burnt Toes, Nathan Gressick, Trafo, Undieware, Aries Archives, Britton Bishop, Van, Yameetin Wolf, Tonico, KC, Denzel 1989, Blaine Cords, Recious Ivy, Celtic Fox, or Celtic Fox rather, Lucky Charms, Reverse Cluck, Lydia Marie, Cat Mushroom, JMT, Aramis, Catseed Lay, Brash Candicoot, Nori, Majin, T.Y. Denny, the Namas, One, Hadiafa, and Abbas, and Mohammed, Ruthless Hauser, a Rogue Spartan, Ruby, Swish, Cupcakes, Jiro, Santa, the Anime King, Drag Gamers, Age, Nathaniel, the Hunter, and the Trexie, Ocean, Orfox, Wisp, Ninja Dead, H. Visconti, Dominicato, Goofos, Big Rosie 45, Dylan, Zodiac Senpai, Horse of Amity, Destron Gaming, Bobs, Horsetti, Space Lozzie, Zach Arrowwood, Just Here, Alive R360, The Chin 22, Jack of the Frost, Break, Orbit, Captain Albus Albanork, The Cool Guy 22, The Wine Punch, Well Like Watch, Tyrone Jones, Bluest Gecko, Trees About, Matthew Kennedy, T. Baggins, Beware, Electro Lucario, Nid, Malachi Zalmakai, Connor Shaw, Goat, Aaron E., Grant R., Travis Hinton, Hans, Dream, Adnan Al-Zaid, Elijah Tidwell, Dylan Purpose, Darth, Sumnida, Redactivism, Oreo, That Darling Red Draconovich, 200, Daniel Moody, Ireland, Despair, Riley Pointer, Adrian Petrie, Reese Mario, Death Boy Bandit, Penguin, Sage 29, Ash B, Harry, Pokey Pro, Mallow, Rexy Young Illuminati, Salty Eggs, Wreck-It Basher 45, Mob Night, Castle Strong, Addie C, Diswordy Emperor, Jacob Square, DJ Monk 23, Squid Water, Bright Smith Gamer Hag, Abracadabra, Addy Cadabra, Bad Dragonite, King Pie, Just J, and Benny Samaru, Star S, MD, Hey Bill, Yeet Micah, 626 Gaming, News Art World, Salumio, Gwendolyn, Eastgander 072, Andrew Frost, Peak Anonymous, Summit Slav, Nuck, Nguyen, Ian Ray, Bacon, C Knight, whatever this is, and Corn on the Cob. Thank you all for supporting the channel, and as always, don't do anything I'm gonna do, don't do anything I'm gonna do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!